Good evening, squad. I hope you've all had a great day of video game news and other life. So we are. It's Wednesday, which is not a stream schedule day, but I can't be here Friday, so I figured I'd at least get in an extra stream tonight. For 428. I'm also not going to be around for Sunday, which is the other normal stream time, but we'll still be here tomorrow night doing stuff. So we're gonna play 428 today, probably tomorrow, and then I'll figure out next week. Maybe we can do a bonus stream to make up for Sunday. We'll see. I see Eric and Lady Lay and Kavina. In fact, the Switch is getting a Dragon Quest XI. Yeah, there was some good stuff in that direct today. I mean, it's weird. The direct was a little weird. It's I had many ideas of things that they would talk about. You know, Luigi's Mansion 3, Animal Crossing. I think Fire Emblem, Smash were givens, but it was like, even the Smash stuff was kind of like, oh yeah, hey, version 3's coming. We're not going to talk about that though. I'm like, okay. Why was this here? It was odd. Hey Vezon. But there was some good stuff in there too. Dragon Quest XI. What's that other one? Oninaki looked interesting. Yoshi, which we know is coming in March. I took notes, but they're not near me. I think I tweeted everything that I was like interested in. I've got a friend telling me I should play Rune Factory 4 when it comes out. So probably give that a look-see. Fire Emblem looks neat. I'm excited for that. Zelda Link's Awakening was not what I thought they would end the direct with, but that was cool. Hey G-Dwarf. It was... in a weird way, I kind of wish I had live streamed the direct. Because it was just like, oh, what? Zelda? Really? Are they doing more Wake? No, wait, that's not. Alright, here we are. And I immediately texted Beach, because I don't think Awakening is his favorite one. I think it's A Link to the Past, but still within that time realm. Rune Factory 4 is a lot of fun. Zelda with Harvest Moon Story of Seasons on the side. Yeah, that's probably something I'd enjoy. Probably. Chocobo Mystery Dungeon looks like fun, guys. Anything where I get to be a Chocobo seems like fun. Also, I'm a little disappointed because I think I misread the Team Cherry tweet about the Hollow Knight DLC, and I thought it was coming out tomorrow, but I think they're not actually dropping it tomorrow so much as they're just going to tell us about it tomorrow. And I'm still hyped for it, but... Hornet's my favorite. Alright, we're here for 428 though, so I guess I'll read some stories. I am kind of curious about getting Final Fantasy IX for the Switch too, because I think I'd play it on that at least. What were we doing? Alright, clearly everybody has had their timelines started. Right, we had a couple of keep outs that we had to get past, which means a lot of jumping. Is Maria seems to be the only one who made it to the end of this chapter. Oh, also, I think the character's name is pronounced Kanan? Kanan? And I'm only basing that off the fact that I've been rewatching Shirobako, and they've got an anime studio with that name. So, yeah. Okay, now we got Achi here too. So who do we need? We need to find a jump point for Kano, Minorikawa, and Osawa. Oh, also, I guess I should say this now. I did get the last 2 streams of this game added to the YouTube playlist just earlier today. I meant to get them up a little bit earlier, but they are up. So all the VODs for this game so far, excluding this one, which is currently being streamed, are on YouTube now. Alright, let's see if we can find a jump point. You don't have anything. You don't have any. Who is that guy? Is it in here? Ah, Minorikawa. Cool, we do need that, so let's try and see if that'll take that out. What was he doing? He was on his way back to the building. Hitomi, wait. As he ran along Koendori after Miku, Minorikawa heard someone shout out a familiar name. Hitomi? Oh, right, he was also looking for the twins because they were part of a story or something that he thought he could get. It was a pretty common name. Ordinarily, he wouldn't have given it a second thought, but he remembered that one of the Miss Toriyama winners was named Hitomi Osawa. That made him curious. A moment later, he heard a cell phone ringtone. He immediately recognized it as an Aya Kamiki song. His reporter's instincts tingled. He stopped to take a look around, and one young woman caught his eye almost immediately. Oh, right, the van blew up a bunch of times last time. He couldn't assume that any pretty girl he saw was Miss Midoriyama. After all, it'd be a little too convenient if he just so happened to run into her now. Still, it didn't cost him anything to ask, "Are you Hitomi Osawa?" He might as well at least check. But to his own surprise, he hesitated in embarrassment. He'd never been too embarrassed to ask a question before. Yeah, given his behavior, I'd be surprised he was ever embarrassed in his life. He didn't get a chance to contemplate that realization. Is this where the van blows up? Yeah, this is where the van blows up. A massive fiery blast knocked him from his feet. A deafening roar set his head throbbing. What was that? What's going on? He lay in a daze on the ground, trying to wrap his mind around what had just happened. Behind him, there was a minivan, fiercely ablaze. A minivan? An explosion? The first thing to pop into his mind was the attempted terrorist attack on Kasumigaseki 2 years earlier. An unoccupied minivan had exploded outside an MPD station, and afterward, a device meant to scatter a dangerous biological agent had been discovered near the subway. In the end, no one had been harmed, but there were rumors the government had paid a terrorist organization a hefty sum to keep it that way. Right now, Minorikawa was a stone's throw from the Shibuya precinct. Could this be a repeat of the Kasumigaseki attack? The entire area was in an uproar. People were running around in panic. Minorikawa could see several injured people lying on the ground, unmoving. And yet, despite the gravity of the situation, numerous onlookers were casually taking photos with their cell phones. Minorikawa got to his feet and went to try to get everyone away from the scene of the explosion. "Hey, you guys, get back! There could be another bomb!" Minorikawa looked around as he pushed back the crowd. He was getting the strong whiff of a scoop. He needed to write his copy ASAP, But he couldn't just turn his back on the situation now. Two young men were strolling toward the burning vehicle, and they had the look of juvenile delinquents. Whoa, what the heck? Is this for real? Ain't this dangerous? Like, for serious? The pair tried to find an optimal vantage point. Hey, Minarakawa snapped. Don't get any closer. He spread his arms wide to hold them back. The young men came to a halt, but otherwise paid him no heed. Oh, this is bad. This is for real bad. Think this is the terrorist thing? Yo, get out your phone. Come on. But like, you think it is? Dude, shut up. Just hurry up and call Susumu. The taller of the two, dressed in red, was ordering around his blue-clad companion. Huh? The boy in blue huffed. Man, do it yourself. Say what now? V, this ain't no time to get yourself all worked up. Norikawa stood there, arms still held wide, getting more and more annoyed at their back and forth. Yo, just make the call, man. The young fellow in red scowled. He wasn't going to back down. Huh? Yo, what difference does it make if I do it or you do it? Doesn't make any difference, so it doesn't matter if you do it. Yeah, right, it don't matter. So in that case, you do it. Look, I'm telling you to just make the call. And I'm telling you to just make it yourself. Oh, enough of this already. Minarakawa opened his mouth to tell them off. But then the young man in red spoke again. Dude, the goods from over at Endo Electronics are gone. You gotta let Susumu know. The name Endo Electronics caught Minarakawa's attention. Huh? Yeah, but ain't that all that Achi dude's fault for getting all huffy at us? I mean, it was Kiryu who told us to go find the Endo storehouse. Yeah, but Susumu don't like dealing in stolen goods. Says it dirties the SOS name. Well, what a coincidence. Looked like these two were SOS members. Hey! Minarakawa called out, You two! Finally, he succeeded in getting their attention. Where's this Susumu fellow? I'd like to talk to him. He had no idea who Susumu was, having only heard the name just now. Still, from the way these two were talking, it seemed clear he held some position of leadership. You think I'd tell you if I knew? The fellow in red snarled. Minarakawa kept his composure. Listen, you guys know the Tenryo Gumi? The Tenryo Gumi was a Yakuza syndicate that operated in Shibuya. Tenryo Gumi, an up-and-coming... Wait, you can be up-and-coming? Alright. An up-and-coming Yakuza syndicate that turned up on the scene 10 years ago, with the seemingly legitimate Takarada financing as its business front. The group offers monetary solutions for people in financial trouble, but those who accept their offers soon find that their troubles only grow and grow, embroiled in conflict with the Kanto Shiramine Gumi, who have been long established in Shibuya. Alright. Them up-and-comers. These street kids were sure to be familiar with the name, if nothing else. I may not look it, but I'm in pretty tight with the Tenryo Gumi, and maybe you two don't know it, but Susumu's been showing up at their office a lot lately. Susumu's been dealing with the Yakuza? Whoa, for real? Sweet! The two punks bought it completely. What's SOS using as their hangout these days? I've got a little something to discuss with Susumu. Right. Now it's this bar called Inferno. Minarakawa made a mental note of the name. Right. And Inferno is where exactly? The two young men suddenly looked distinctly uncomfortable. Uh-oh. Later. Yeah, it's a good thing to do. Backing away, they took off through the crowd. Hey, wait up! I need to know where Inferno is! But the pair had already vanished. Ambulances began arriving at the scene, and paramedics rushed out to tend to the wounded. Excuse me, would you mind answering a few questions? Minarakawa turned to see a man in a suit approach him, flashing his badge. There's our jump point for Kano. So a detective with questions for him, huh? How about you answer a few questions for me? Was this an accident or an attack? We still don't know many details. Let me rephrase that for you. This is a major incident, Minarakawa exclaimed. Huh? The detective looked pretty flummoxed. I've been around the block a few times, and I know all your police PR lingo. And when you start talking about the details, that is 100% indicative of a major incident. Brushing aside Minarakawa's remark, the detective tried another question. Did you happen to notice anything unusual prior to the explosion? Unusual? Minorikawa thought back to the moments before the minivan blew up. Now that you mention it, I think I heard a cell phone ringtone. The detective tilted his head. A ringtone? No, never mind, forget that. There's no way the ringtone on someone's phone would be audible through all that. Minorikawa struck the thought from his own mind as he said it. In all likelihood, he'd associated the ringtone and the explosion simply because one had happened right before the other. Kano. A large-statured Caucasian man had called out to the detective. Evidently, the detective's name was Kano. "Thank you for your cooperation," he said with a bow. Then he ran over to the foreigner. "Mr. Minorikawa!" Minorikawa turned at a female voice behind him. He found Miku standing there. She looked like she'd been crying. "Miku, about earlier, He trailed off, searching for an apology. "It's okay. That doesn't matter right now." Miku looked around the scene. Minorikawa followed her gaze. "Something big went down here," he said. "I know!" she exclaimed. "The explosion! I saw it happen with my own eyes!" "You what?" Miku looked around nervously. "Are you alright?" he asked her. "You're not hurt, are you?" "I'm okay. My ears are still ringing a bit, is all." "Good. So what'd you see at the time of the explosion?" Miku assumed a thoughtful expression. "There was this girl who was running toward the minivan. And then I think I saw this other Middle Eastern girl suddenly make a dive for her. And then the van just exploded." "Wait, hold on," Minorikawa said. "So if I'm getting this right, it sounds like this Middle Eastern girl saved the girl who was running up to the van." Miku nodded. And then the phone rang. It was Minorikawa's phone, chiming. He'd received an email. It was from Chiaki. "Mr. Mino, are you still working on your copy?" He checked his watch. At this point, the 4 o'clock deadline was barely 20 minutes away. Nonetheless, he decided to stay at the bomb scene. He could definitely smell a scoop here. He was sure of it. Even if he couldn't get his 6 pages done by 4, landing a major scoop should be enough to persuade the loan company. Minorikawa jotted his phone number down and handed it to Miku. "I'll make things up to you," he said. "Give me a call later." Miku took the scrap of paper, puzzled. "If you're looking for an Aki Jujitsu dojo, I know a few." At that, her face lit up. Minorikawa decided to process the scene for clues. As he wandered around, he caught sight of Detective Kano and his Caucasian colleague heading down an alley. "Hey, Evlock!" Evening, Heather and squad. Hyped for some 428 nothingness. Burning Hammer. Oh, Burning Hammer. Thank you for that cheer. I hope you are doing well. We're probably going to watch this van explode probably about 3 more times, I think, given the storylines I have to go through. What's that I smell? Something pretty fishy. If they were slipping away for a private conversation, maybe there was some way he could listen in. Minorikawa hurried into one of the buildings that bordered the alley. He looked around and found a public bathroom upstairs on the alley side of the building. Hoping beyond hope, he slipped up to the bathroom window. Voices outside! He held his breath and listened. "Those international criminals you mentioned," Kano's words were faint, but he could make them out. Minorikawa did a little fist pump. "Correct. Roughly 8 hours ago, they infected Maria Osawa with the Ugu virus. Then they let her loose somewhere in Shibuya. Hold on. By Uga, you mean..." The discussion involved some terms Minorikawa wasn't familiar with. He focused all of his mental energy on what the two were saying. "This is a killer virus with a 100% mortality rate once it takes hold." 100%, Minorikawa muttered to himself. The shock caused him to unclench the fist he didn't realize he'd made. This wasn't just an interesting conversation. It was monumental. It has an incubation period of 12 hours. In another 4 hours, Maria Osawa will go symptomatic. After that, she'll begin spreading the virus through the city. It's capable of airborne transmission? If we don't administer Kenji Osawa's antiviral before she develops symptoms, yes? Everyone in Shibuya is going to die. Minorikawa felt goosebumps rise all over his body. If they were talking about a virus and Kenji Osawa, they could only mean that Kenji Osawa. He recalled what Osawa had said earlier about the power balance of the world being at stake. There was no doubt about it. This was a tremendous scoop. Well, then we need to find Maria and get the antiviral to her as soon as possible. Just calm down. There's more to the story. It's starting to leak out. The door swung open loudly and someone came barging into the bathroom. Of course it's you. It was Yanagishita. Why him again? And why here of all places? Yanagishita was on the verge of hysterics. His voice must have been audible outside. Kano and his companion went to take their discussion elsewhere. And they'd just been getting to the good part. You son of a bee! Enraged, Minarakawa grabbed Yanagishita and tossed him to the floor. I'm leaking! Shut your mouth! He put all of his strength into an ankle hold and gave him a good twist. Fun fact, ankle holds are a professional wrestling technique that involves grabbing the opponent by the ankle. Being caught up like this can be extremely painful. It also puts a lot of pressure on the lower body, and if you're already fighting the urge to urinate, well... Yanagishita wailed. Minarakawa left the idiot blubbering in the bathroom and hurried out of the building. He hadn't heard the whole discussion, but he had a scoop on his hands anyway. This would be a tremendous score for Heaven Publishing, enough to let the company rebuild. He was certain of it. And if I'm the one saying it, it's gotta be true. As he ran along, Minarakawa tried to plan his next steps. First, he had to get back to the editing office. He'd explain the situation to the people from the loan company. Then he'd go find that paperwork for Osawa and have Chiaki check his copy. And then after that... Okay, so he still had a lot of things he needed to do. He swatted himself on both cheeks to get himself psyched up. His phone rang. Nope. His phone rang. It was Chiaki. Mr. Mino, something terrible has happened. Chiaki's voice was a broken yelp. Whoa, calm down. Over on Koendori, this minivan exploded. Yeah, I'm well aware. Thanks to that, I've got a big scoop that... Chiaki cut him off. Just now, I got a call from Mr. Toyama's daughter, Hana. This time Minarakawa waited for her to finish. He had a sinking feeling. She said that Mr. Toyama was in there. It was a suicide. Okay, that can't be true. Minarakawa's knees buckled. Tell me you're joking. No, I mean, the van explosion was all over the news, and Hana was in tears on the phone, and... Mr. Mino? Mr. Mino, are you still there? Toyama had... killed himself? Minarakawa felt the energy drained from his body. Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure for a second if we were gonna get a bad end there or not. I don't think he was in that van. Alright. We need Osawa and Kano. This is probably Kano's jump. I don't believe... I've watched too much anime to believe a death without a body. And even then, I've watched too much anime to believe a death even with a body. Several people were on the ground, nearby, evidently injured by the explosion. A girl in a hoodie was crouched among them, doing her best to tend their injuries. The girl is Miku Morita. While walking along, upset at Minarakawa for not introducing her to an Aki Jiu-Jitsu dojo, she happened across the aftermath of the minivan explosion. Unable to stand idly by when faced with such a horrific scene, she pitched in as best as she could to help the wounded. So that's a jump point. Kano recognized her as the girl he talked to earlier during the traffic jam. Police! He announced. Get back, let me handle this. The girl was visibly relieved. Help her, she said. She pointed to a figure lying on the sidewalk, a short distance from the burning minivan. It was a Middle Eastern girl. She appeared to be unconscious. I think she got hurt rescuing another girl, about college age, the girl in the hoodie said. A college-age girl. That might be Hitomi. Yep, that narrowed it down to that. What happened to the girl she saved? Kano asked. The Good Samaritan looked around. Huh? Where'd she go? The rescuee had disappeared. This girl here, the girl in the hoodie, gestured toward the fallen girl. I can't believe how fast she was. She spoke with a hint of awe. The way she moved to get to the other girl, she was on a level way beyond mine. Kano took another look at the injured girl. Her figure looked rather delicate. It was hard to believe that she was capable of great feats of athleticism, such as back alley cosplay fights. He started toward her, but Stanley stepped ahead of him. Leave this one to me, he said. His expression was unusually stern, even for him. Do you know her? Kano asked. The American didn't answer as he checked the girl's pulse and then her pupils. Hey, Stanley, don't you have any other things you should be doing? Stanley snapped. Fine then. Kano decided to collect some eyewitness accounts. Patrol cars and ambulances arrived at the scene in a steady stream. Once the vehicle fire was under control, things gradually began to calm down. Several officers worked to cover the area around the burned minivan with a blue tarp. Kano got his questioning underway, starting by flashing his badge at a man near the front of the crowd. Excuse me, would you mind answering a few questions? The man puffed himself up. How about you answer a few questions for me? Was this an accident or an attack? We still don't know many details, Kano admitted. The man shoved his finger in Kano's face. Let me rephrase that for you. This is a major incident, huh? I've been around the block a few times. I know all your police PR lingo, and when you start talking about the details, that is 100% indicative of a major incident. Well, I sure picked the wrong guy to try and talk to. Stifling his frustration, Kano continued his questioning. Did you happen to notice anything unusual prior to the explosion? Unusual? Now that you mention it, I think I heard a cell phone ringtone. A ringtone? No, never mind. Forget that. There's no way the ringtone on someone's phone could be audible through all of that. The man was probably right, but somehow the idea nagged at Kano. He jotted down a note in his pad. Kano? It was Stanley. Perfect timing. Thank you for your cooperation, Kano told the man. Then he hurried on his way. Stanley stepped in close enough to whisper. Who was that guy? An eyewitness to the explosion, apparently. Did you have any info? He said he heard a cell phone ringtone at the time of the explosion. Not sure if that's significant, though. Stanley stood silently for a moment, thinking. What about that girl? Kano asked. Has she woken up? No. I'm going to drive her to the hospital. Huh? Why do that yourself? Just look around, Stanley said. He cast his eyes over out on the scene. There were still many injured people lying on the roadside. It seemed the authorities hadn't sent enough ambulances. But isn't your car back in Maruyamacho? Kano asked. Under the circumstances, I think it makes sense for me to go back for it, Stanley replied coolly. Besides, I have a few things I'd like to ask her. Kano was curious. You do? He asked. Stanley's cell rang. Yes? Stanley answered the phone in English. As he listened, his demeanor changed. The blood drained from his face and his hand began to tremble slightly as it gripped the phone. Kano had never seen him this shaken up. You got it, Stanley said at last. He hung up the phone and let out a sigh. What is it? Stanley headed into an alley without responding. Kano hurried after him. Once they were out of earshot of the crowd, Stanley finally spoke. That call right now is from Gordon, my superior. He broke off there and for a long while was silent. He appeared to be struggling with some strong emotion. I feel like he will... Now let's just get impatient about it. What is it? If you're going to tell me something, then tell me. Alright, Stanley said at last. I can trust you with this. Wow, never thought I'd hear you say trust me. But Stanley's expression remained dead serious. We were contacted on our end by the mastermind of this plot. Those international criminals you mentioned. Correct. Roughly 8 hours ago, they infected Maria Osawa with the virus. Then they let her loose somewhere in Shibuya. Hold on. By Ua, you mean... Kano thought back to his earlier conversation with Stanley. These criminals were trying to get their hands on a new drug, an antiviral drug developed by Kenji Osawa that had been shown to be effective against the Ua virus. Stanley hesitated before continuing. This is a killer virus with a 100% mortality rate once it takes hold. Kenji Osawa's antiviral is our only means of combating it. Okay, so Hitomi was infected and then given the cure, but Maria's also been infected. Not sure why. A mortality rate of 100%. Has an incubation period of 12 hours. Another 4 hours, Maria Osawa will go symptomatic. After that, she'll begin spreading the virus through the city. It's capable of airborne transmission. Not so fun fact. Airborne transmission. Following the onset of symptoms, individuals infected with the Ua virus bleed from the lungs, and the virus is readily released into the air via coughing. The Ua virus is highly resilient in the open air and can survive even after saliva or other fluids have evaporated. Simply getting within 2 meters of a symptomatic patient is said to carry a high risk of infection. Bodily fluids from deceased patients carried an especially high concentration of the virus, and anything contaminated with such fluids must be thoroughly sterilized before it is safe. Stanley nodded. If we don't administer Kenji Osawa's antiviral before she develops symptoms... Yes? Kano's voice was trembling now. Stanley spoke with complete certainty. Everyone in Shibuya is going to die. Well, then we need to find Maria Osawa and get the antiviral to her as soon as possible, Kano said, panicking. Stanley remained cool. Just calm down. There's more to the story. That... Stanley was interrupted by a strange sound from the upper floors of a nearby building. Unsure of what it was, the two men hurriedly relocated. They paused when they came to a vacant lot. The place was deserted. No need to worry about being overheard here. Just root for Monokuma to show up in every game. Isn't there some sort of game being made by that team coming out in like March? You said there was more to the story, Kano prompted. The antiviral is in question is stored in Kenji Osawa's laboratory. The lab is protected by a sophisticated security system, and apparently the storage area where the drug is kept requires fingerprint authentication from both Osawa and Tanaka. What? But Tanaka's... Kano couldn't help but gasp. Tanaka was clearly a fugitive, the prime suspect in the kidnapping case. There was no chance of getting any fingerprint authorization from him at this stage. Is there any other way to get in? Kano asked. The door can also be unlocked via password in place of the fingerprint scanner, but we'd still need to know what Tanaka chose for his password. No. In any event, Stanley said, it's essential that we track down and secure Maria, but, he went on, his voice grave, even if we get Maria to safety, the mastermind is now in possession of the Ua virus. If they want to, they can unleash a bioterrorist attack on Shibuya at any time. To put it bluntly, the lives of every man, woman, and child in the city are in their hands. Kano felt a pulse of fear deep enough to give him vertigo. He slowly tilted his back. Nope, he slowly tilted his... Nope, that does say it that way. Alright. He slowly tilted his back, his head, and gazed at the sky, vast and blue as always. There had to be tens of thousands of people in Shibuya right now. Yeah, they've got an extra word in that sentence. Rumi and Shizuyu were among them, and they might all be dead within a day. It felt so unreal. Kano's mind almost couldn't. With an effort of will, he shook himself out of his daze. No, this was no time to waver. We have to try, he said. In the next 4 hours, we need to find Maria Osawa and figure out a way to stop this mastermind and the Ua virus. The words were as much for himself as they were for his companion. Let's do this, Stanley. We might not always see eye to eye, but together I feel like you and I could find a way. Maybe he bent over backwards and tilted his neck like a yoga pose. Stanley averted his gaze. My job here is simply to apprehend the mastermind. Kano felt a resurgence of his earlier anger at Stanley. Once again, he was putting his duties above human life. I'm sorry. Stanley's voice was a quiet mutter. You should get away from Shibuya as soon as possible, Kano. Kano couldn't imagine that the American would ever be worried for him. I appreciate the warning, he said, but I'm seeing this through to the end. This isn't the sort of thing you can solve with just an effort of willpower. Even so, giving up isn't the Japanese detective way. Stanley let out a nasal chuckle. Back to that again, are we? Same to you. Kano managed a tiny chuckle of his own. Listen, Stanley went on after a moment, this is just between you and me. The mastermind behind this kidnapping case is an arms dealer who goes by the name Alphard. Arms dealers. Beyond simply selling weapons, illegal arms dealers are, so frequently involved in smuggling weapons, unlawfully obtained through deals with government or military contacts. In recent years, such enterprises have become increasingly globalized. Some dealers form smuggling networks that also deal in money laundering, drug trafficking, and more. Remember, it's important to diversify your portfolio. Gun fact. Oh, that would have been good. Wish I'd thought of that. Alphard, the attempted bioterrorist attack on Kusumugaseki, a hotel bombing in Chicago. Alphard had a hand in all of them. What do you know about this criminal? Kano asked. Stanley's expression grew even darker. We've seen a silhouette once. Alfred's signature is extremely meticulous planning. The scariest of criminals. I don't mean meticulous in the same way you or I might normally think of it. Their plans are perfectly imperfect. Do you get what I mean? No, I don't. Kano shook his head. Alfred deliberately engineers accidents to make things complicated and unpredictable. It's difficult to get a good grasp of what's going on when the situation seems to be falling apart. People tend not to consider that coincidental mishaps might be anything but. Alright, now I'm kind of just expecting the real villain to be Junko at the end of this. In the end, they don't even realize they were playing right into the mastermind's hands all along. Kano could hear the intensity in Stanley's voice. I'm afraid that's all I can say. Stanley held out his right hand. See you around, Kano, if you're still alive. If we're still alive. You know, both of us. If we're still alive, Kano let that sink in for a moment. Nah, I'll shake your hand after we finish this case. With a slight smile, Stanley withdrew his hand. Then the two bumped fists instead. Alright, we'll meet again, Kano. I'm sure of it. Yeah, see you then. No sooner had Stanley departed than Kuzu's voice came in over the wireless. Attention all units. As of now, further investigation on the kidnapping case is suspended. The director's voice sounded strangely cold. I repeat, as of now, further investigation on the kidnapping case is suspended. Wait, hold on, sir? Kano shouted. What is it, Kano? Could you let us know why? We've received information that Maria Osawa has been infected with an unknown virus. And has been released somewhere in Shibuya. I thought there was a Monokuma cameo in Persona 5, but apparently it's another character. Oh. That matched up with what Stanley had said earlier. An anti-bioterrorism security force will probably be deployed in Shibuya. Fact. Bioterrorism. Terrorism involving biological agents such as bacteria or viruses. Biological weapons are easier to acquire and transport than nuclear weapons. And because they rely on an organism's natural ability to proliferate or infect, they can yield powerful results for low effort. For these reasons, recent years have been have seen widespread apprehension about the possibility that such weapons might be used by terrorists. In the event that a bioterrorist attack occurred in Japan, temporary quarantine and decontamination facilities would be set up in the area affected. This is no longer a simple kidnapping case. Our part in this is finished. No, it's not! We haven't managed to resolve anything! Kano, I assure you, everyone else feels the same as you do. Kuzi's voice had a cautionary tone. They're still performing the autopsy on the body found in the blue minivan that exploded. I'll let you know once we have a positive ID. Kuzi out. Director! The line had already gone dead. Left at a loss, Kano gazed out at the cityscape. The sight of the bombed vehicle had calmed down briefly, but now the news networks had begun reporting the herd of onlookers was growing. There was also a sizable crowd gathered outside of a large home electronics store. Large LCD televisions on display were showing a press conference being held by the governor of Tokyo. No, we might find something new. Kano might learn something new about the case. He decided to watch the broadcast. Huh. So a word starting with irking. Alright. To working closely with the administration, we are keeping a careful eye on the situation as it develops. The governor's expression was solemn as he spoke. The moment he finished his statement, the reporters bombarded him with questions. This seems similar to the bioterrorist attack on Kusumu-Gaseki 2 years ago. Is there any possible connection? What countermeasures do we have in the event that Shibuya is the target of bioterrorism? The governor was visibly disconcerted. If this does turn out to be a bioterrorist attack, we will establish emergency shelters with a large-scale quarantine station at Yoyogi Park. However, there are still many details that remain unknown. The politician was clearly struggling to maintain his composure. Can you comment on the rumors? We're hearing that Shibuya might be blockaded off. Don't be ridiculous, the governor barked. What outlet are you with? Are you trying to start a panic when we don't know all the details? Besides, it wouldn't even be possible to blockade the whole of Shibuya. The press conference continued. The governor and the reporters locked in a belligerent back and forth. Kano left the electronics store and headed for the cafe where Rumi and Shizuya were waiting. He had to tell them both to get far away from Shibuya. Well, you learned nothing. The news is not very good at teaching us things we don't know because we are a detective who knows all the other things. The Café Lautrec seemed quiet when Kano arrived. Shizuya was sitting alone. Kano scanned the establishment but didn't see Rumi anywhere. One of the staff greeted him. Welcome. Just one, sir? No, I'm meeting someone, actually. Of course, sir. The hostess smiled and then went on her way. Shizuya was glaring at him. Kano walked over to him and bowed deeply. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. I'm Shinya Kano. You look like even more of a knuckle-dragger than I thought. Shizuya maintained his appraising stare. Rumi had something she needed to do, so she stepped away for a while, he said after a long moment. Kano sat down across from him. There was a laptop computer open on the table. Fun fact, laptops. Right now the laptop is in sleep mode, and there's nothing on the monitor. But just before Kano came in, Shizuya was browsing an internet forum. He takes his user handle from a nickname for the apples he grows on his own farm, which are pretty little things, and nearly as sweet as honey. Oh my goodness, he's the guy, it was like, honey something that Osawa's been talking to. On that forum for that singer. Honey Cutie. Yeah. Waitress came by to take Kano's order, so he asked for an iced coffee. It's totally him. What are you using the computer for? Kano asked. I'm on the internet. Shizu's voice was low and gruff. This cafe has an internet connection? May as well start with a little small talk. So what? Again, Shizuo glared at Kano. The words wouldn't come. No, actually, this is no time to be making idle chit-chat. If they got infected with the virus, Rumi and Shizuo might die. Look, please, you need to leave Shibuya right away. Shizuo's face contorted with confusion. What are you talking about? Why? Kano wasn't sure if he should tell the truth or not. He was strictly prohibited from discussing a case with anyone outside the department. As a former policeman himself, Shizuo ought to understand full well the secrecy and investigation required. But it wasn't like he'd just up and leave town without a good reason. Please listen, Kano said. Let's not tell him why. Because we're in a restaurant with many other people and I don't want anyone overhearing us. At the very least. It's very important that you go through. I'm not at liberty to tell you why. Even if this was Rumi's father, Kano couldn't bring himself to leak secret information. His mind spun with regret. Well, I don't need your say-so, Shizuo huffed. I'm sick of this town anyway. Kano was a bit relieved to hear that. Does this have something to do with the case you're working? Huh? You telling me to leave Shibuya, does this have something to do with your case? Yes, Kano admitted. So why don't you run off with Rumi then? Shizuo's tone was frank. Well, I mean... When Kano didn't have an answer handy, Shizuo let out a single heavy sigh. Is your work important to you? He asked. Kano hesitated. Is it more important than Rumi? Well... Again, Shizuo cut Kano off as he waffled over how to answer. Me, I used to put my work before my family. There was no question in my mind that combating society's ills and solving cases was worth any price. And because of that, I did some pretty reckless things. Almost wound up dead more than once. Shizuo paused, a foreign look in his eyes. My wife did nothing but worry about me. So much that I didn't even realize when she worried herself sick. Oh, now he's gonna become a sad, angry man. I was so caught up in my work that I wasn't even there for her when she finally passed away. It was all so very absurd of me. The waitress came by and set Kano's iced coffee on the table. It sat there, untouched, until Shizuo looked at it pointedly. With a tiny nod, Kano brought the cup to his lips. The bittersweet liquid was a balm to his parched throat. I told Rumi the same story, Shizuo continued. But I didn't tell her how absurd it was. I told her that her father only did what he had to do. He took a sip from his glass of water. Rumi, she's very much like her mother used to be. Their personalities are almost identical. And I don't want her to suffer the same way my wife did. Shizuo's fist clenched in his lap. What was it that made you become a detective in the first place? He asked. Well, at first I got the job because I thought it would make Rumi happy. And then I guess also because I thought it'd make you like me, sir? It was the truth, but Shizuo simply chuckled. If your goal is to get me to like you, you may as well give up now. I'm sorry, sir? I can't do that. Are you this stubborn around Rumi? Shizuo grumbled. I love your daughter, sir. I want to keep her safe to make her happy. And why is that? Whenever I think about her, I just feel so amazing. I'm sure that you or anyone else can empathize with that. Everyone has someone they want to protect who makes them feel that good. It's an admirable thing, wanting to be a detective and protect the happiness of people. But that doesn't mean you need to ignore your own happiness in the process. Oh wait, that was Sir saying that. What you say may be true, sir. Earlier today, my partner was stabbed, and today's his wife's birthday. Shizuo arched his brow. Is he going to make it? We're not sure yet. Last I knew, he was in critical condition. This is why I keep saying that the life of a detective is... Shizuo's words trailed off into a lamenting murmur. Even so, Kano was unmoved. I don't... Kano. Sweet, sweet Kano. Is really now the time to bring up the Dick Diary? Dictum number 1. Never lose sight of what you're supposed to protect. Ever. What's that? Something the senior detective I admire very much said. It's the fundamental guiding principle I've stuck to as a detective, but I was wrong about the real meaning behind it. My partner was stabbed. There are people I want to rescue. So much has happened, and now I finally understand what those words mean. When you see someone in trouble, you help them. That's not something a good detective does. That's something a good person does. Kano took a long, good look at Shizuo's face. He had surprised himself finding the words to speak his feelings so clearly, and he wondered what effect it would have had on the older man. I'm sure that from your perspective, as my future father-in-law, my being a detective means that I'm putting my life on the line. But that's not entirely true. I can only be myself. This is the kind of person I am. I care about helping people. Even if I were a baker, or a brewer, or a candlestick maker, I mean a bookseller, I'd still act the same way. You're being ridiculous. A baker and a detective don't assume anywhere near the same risks. I suppose that's true. Kano fussed with his hair sheepishly. Shizuo murmured, I think I see what kind of man you are now. He sounded oddly defeated. Which is why now is no time to just futz around. Kano sat up straighter at Shizuo's weighty tone. A detective needs more than just passion. A detective can't solve all his problems with sheer determination alone. But at the same time, he needs more than just the ability to coldly assess a situation. He needs the conviction to stick to a case when it might otherwise seem prudent to give up. There was something new in Shizuo's expression now, and a gleam in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Kano almost felt like he was being sermonized to by a senior officer. You got that? You need a cool mind but a fiery spirit. A detective without both of those is worth nothing. Do you mind if I write that down in my notebook here? Look, Shizuo said, suddenly embarrassed. Aren't you in a hurry? Don't you have to get back to your case? Yes. And sir, please, I need you and your daughter to leave Shibuya right away. Yeah, I hear ya. Kano conjured up Rumi's face in his mind. There was a chance he might never see her again. He forced the thought away as best as he could. By the way, if I may ask, Shizuo said, what was it about Rumi that made you fall in love with her? What? Where's this coming from all of a sudden? Was it her looks? No, it wasn't just that. Kano found himself tongue-tied again. I mean, she is pretty cute. Even if this is my own daughter I'm talking about. Shizuo shocked him by grinning from ear to ear. Well, yes, sure she is, Kano replied. But it's more than just that. She's also very sweet and kind-hearted. Ah, she is, isn't she? Yeah, she really is. For the first time, Kano and Shizuo smiled at one another. You're a man who lets his emotions show on his face, Shizuo said. And for a detective, that's not so bad. Thank you, sir, Kano said. He bowed to Shizuo as he stood up from his seat. Never lose sight of what you're supposed to protect, huh? I like that. Wise words indeed. Kano turned to look back and then bowed deeply to Shizuo one last time. The ability to coldly assess a situation. Kano knew what he needed to do. There was one thing that was nagging him. No matter how hard he thought about it, it still didn't add up. Why would Tateno let Al-Karawan go free? He needed to get back to the precinct and get the truth from Al-Karawan firsthand. As he walked along, he considered what he did know about the facts of the case. Just what sort of plan had Alphard put into motion here? It seemed that Tanaka and Osawa held the keys to understanding it. There had been relay handoffs of the phony attaché case, a relay that Tanaka had been complicit in. Then there was Hitomi missing, carrying the antiviral. Osawa had confirmed that himself. Keno was starting to form a vague picture of what Alphard was up to. If the mastermind's goal was to acquire the antiviral, then obtaining the cooperation of Osawa and Tanaka was vital to that plan. After all, their fingerprint verification was required to physically access the drug. In order to overcome that hurdle, Alfred had presumably managed to win over Tanaka somehow, and then had kidnapped Maria Osawa to provide leverage against her father. No doubt that was how they'd gotten Hitomi to take the antiviral with her to Hachiko. While the police were distracted by following the attaché case, Alfred would then take the antiviral from Hitomi. That was the general plan as far as Kano could surmise. Just then, a call from Kusa came in over the wireless. We've identified the body found inside the blown-up minivan. Kano's hand tingled as it gripped the wireless. Mamoru Tanaka, male, 40 years old. Ha! I knew it wasn't Hana's dad. An employee of Okoshi Pharmaceutical. Positive ID was obtained from the subject's personal belongings. So that might not be Tanaka. What? Kano gasped. If Tanaka was dead, it would be almost impossible to access the antiviral drug in the laboratory. At this point, the only antiviral they had any chance of obtaining was whatever Hitomi was carrying. Kano thought back to what Stanley had said earlier. Even if we get Maria to safety, the mastermind is in possession of the Uva virus. If they want to, they can unleash a bioterrorist attack on Shibuya at any time. Basically, everyone's in danger. No. A chill ran down Kano's spine. If someone did release the Uva virus, there would be no way to stop it from spreading. If Alfred really was planning to bioterror attack, Shibuya would well and truly become a city of the dead. He couldn't help but feel that the whole department was playing right into Alfred's hands. Kano staggered, physically stricken by the realization of just how terrifying a foe they were up against. Alright then. And I think Osawa was the last jump, so jump. I can't remember what you were up to, but we're going there now. Right, we're in the living room being angry. Before the news was shared with the Osawas, the members of the investigation team quietly briefed Detective Kajiwara. Osawa and I sat on the sofa on the far side of the room, watching. They could see Kajiwara go pale. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief several times. Bad news, Osawa thought. Mr. Osawa, ma'am. Kajiwara shuffled his way over to them at last. We've just gotten word from headquarters. In case you weren't aware, headquarters. Right now the task force is in an uproar after a change in direction from the higher-ups. The detectives who were on the scene have been ordered to discontinue the kidnapping investigation. This is another jump point, but we don't need it. He hesitated, ominously. Osawa braced himself. Please, let's hear it. It would seem that your daughter Maria is safe. What? Osawa felt an unexpected surge of relief. You mean it? Except... The case has been solved, added I. For a moment they almost sounded like a happily married couple. It was only the stern look on Kajiwara's face that gave them pause. However, as of yet, we do not have her in custody. I'm not sure I understand, Osawa said. You know she's alive, but you don't have her? How? Deep furrows appeared in Kajiwara's forehead. I'm sorry, sir. The information we've received from up top is complicated. We've confirmed that she was able to escape confinement. It's just, the detective gave every appearance of holding something back. If there's something you need to tell us, then just say it, Osawa told him. It would seem that Maria has been infected with a virus. Infected? Osawa felt as if a taloned claw had just clutched his heart. It's not one I've ever heard of before, but apparently it's called the virus. Osawa's vision went dark. He felt as if he'd been plunged into a black void of despair. "Darling," I asked raspily. She didn't need to put her fears into words. Osawa felt them just as plainly in his own gut. "You're an expert on virology, aren't you, Mr. Osawa?" Kejiwara said. "Are you familiar with the Zuwa virus?" Osawa held up a hand to forestall further questions. There was no time for that. "How many hours ago was she infected?" he demanded. "I wasn't told that much." "Is that important to know, sir?" "Depending on when Maria was infected, we may or may not still be." Osawa trailed off abruptly as the reality of the situation struck home. This wasn't the same as when Hitomi had been infected. Right now there was no way of getting Tanaka's cooperation, which meant there was no way of accessing the antiviral storage. In other words, getting the cure to Maria would be impossible. Osawa's head swam. "Detective Kajiwara, I beg of you, your people need to catch Tanaka as soon as possible. I can't share the details, but if you don't, something terrible is going to happen." Just then, Kajiwara's cell phone rang. He picked up quickly. What did you say?" The detective's shout shattered the anxious silence that had fallen. I shuddered visibly at the outburst. Kajiwara nodded sharply, still listening. More creases formed into his forehead. "Understood. I'll let them know." He hung up. All eyes were on him. That was headquarters. Osawa swallowed the lump in his throat. He could feel himself quaking all over. A minivan we believe belonged to the syndicate exploded near Jinan in Shibuya. A body was found amongst the burning wreckage of the vehicle. "Who was it?" Osawa interjected. "Tell me." "Please don't let it be Maria. Please don't let it be Hitomi." Kajiwara took a breath before speaking. "We've conclusively identified the remains as Mr. Tanaka's." "No!" The cry was visceral, almost bird-like. Osawa looked around in surprise. It was I. "It's not true! You're lying!" Her shrill screams reverberated through the room. Osawa felt like he wanted to scream too. With Tanaka dead, there was no way to get the antiviral. Which meant that Maria was going to die. Dun dun dun. That should be everyone, so we should get like a fun video sequence. Hey, we made it to 4 o'clock. Which means... I think this game's supposed to go over the course of 10 hours in game time. We started at 10 a.m. So... that means it should end at 8? We're getting through it. We're definitely over halfway. Alright. We got about 2 more hours for tonight, so let's check in with Maria. Right, she was with, Cane Man. I walked counter to the throng of people heading toward the scene of the explosion. In case you forgot, there was an explosion. This was a van. It was big. There's a gun pressed against my back, leaving me no choice but to continue marching forward. I don't have time for this right now. There's something I need to do. My frantic sense of urgency grows and grows. This necklace I'm wearing is probably very important and probably has the cure in it or something. Who knows? Canon. Canon. The only clue I have is that name. The other hazy snippets that have surfaced in my memory provide no answers. Please just tell me, I murmur. Do you know who I am? When the man with the cane doesn't answer, I stop in my tracks. I'm going to start shouting, I warn him. If you want to find out who you are, then do as I say. The barrel of the gun jabs more forcefully into my back. Once we find Hitomi Osawa, you'll remember whether you like it or not. Guess I have no choice but to keep moving then. Are your memories really that precious to you? The man mutters, as we start to move again. I'm taken aback by the question. Well, yes. I mean, isn't that pretty normal? There's a bit of a pause before he replies, his voice sad and distant. You're not going to remember just the good times, you know. What do you mean? I mean that sad and painful memories are going to resurface too. I guess I hadn't really thought about that. But still, whatever kind of memories they are, they're all a part of me. I'm the person I am now because of the sorrow and the pain too. I want to remember. I want to remember who I am. The gunman directs me dispassionately along a series of quiet side streets. Right here. I stop at his words. In front of us is an old multi-tenant office building. We ride the elevator to the 8th floor, then we use the emergency exit to take the stairs up to the rooftop. A cool breeze blows across my cheek. Sit down there. I do as he says, settling myself on the outdoor air conditioning unit. The man lowers his gun, but keeps it in his hand. We'll wait here for a bit. For how long? He lets out a rueful chuckle. Guess we'll have to wait and see. I decide there's no point in trying to fight with him. For now I have to hope he's telling the truth, and whatever's coming will help me get my memories back. If I don't know my past, how can I know what to do about this Canan stuff, or anything else? I stare up at the sky as I wait for whatever this assassin is waiting for. The silence between us is suffocating. Finally, I can't take it any longer. Hey, so I think this is yours. I hold out the notebook I picked up earlier. The man's surprise is plain on his face. Where did you get that? I saw the picture inside. He snatches the book out of my hand. Then he flips through it, looking sad. I'm afraid that another agonizing silence is about to descend when he speaks at last. This is a picture of me and my childhood friends. His voice is low and quiet. We were inseparable back when we were kids. The boy here, he liked to fiddle with machines, always doing things like taking apart radios and whatnot, putting them back together. He was a total bookworm too, so he got picked on a lot. But I was always there to save him from the bullies. All of a sudden the guy's in a sharing mood, I guess. I can feel his aura of murderous rage starting to abate. The girl here was the same age as us, but she felt more like a big sister. Whatever stupid things my other friend and I got up to, she was always willing to laugh it off. Let's just stay quiet and keep listening. We both had a thing for her. A bashful little smile comes to his face. When we were in high school, she told me that she liked me too. So the two of us started dating. But I just have to ask, what about the other guy? He never said anything. I'm not sure how he felt deep down. Oh, alright. So, then is she your wife now? No, we broke up not too long afterward. The man carefully slips the notebook back into his pocket. How come? It was nothing in particular, really. Things just didn't work out. He lets out a little chuckle, then stands up and brushes the dust off his pants. He looks strangely lonely. Alright. Let's go see what Achi's up to, because I believe Hitomi was unconscious when he took her away. Achi could hear ambulance and police sirens wailing on the main road. He looked down at Hitomi, slumped on a park bench beside him. "You sure you're not hurt?" he asked quietly, offering her a bottle of water. "I'm okay." Hitomi took a sip from the bottle. "Thanks. I think I've managed to calm down some." Some of the color had finally returned to her face. "So, Achi began hesitantly. Inside that minivan." Maria wasn't in there. There was a relief in her voice, but also a note of pathos. "I got to look in through the windshield. There was a man laid out in the back seat, but nobody else." The dark cloud lifted from Achi's face. "So, it wasn't your sister?" "No, I didn't see his face. Just that he was wearing a business suit." Bibit Noir, hey, thank you for the cheer. How are you doing? Achi felt the tension ebbing from his body. "That's good then, that it wasn't her. I'd been worried." It was a shame about the poor devil who had been killed, though. "Yeah, if it really was Tanaka, it's gonna be more than a shame. Who was it? Why had they been there?" "So, I guess we're out of leads," Hitomi murmured. She hung her head. "We could try the surveillance center again for now," Achi said. "It'll probably give us better odds of finding your sister than just walking around." "I guess you're right. Shall we then?" Hold on." Achi had a sudden flash of inspiration. "My house is a lot closer from here. Maybe I should ask my dad if we can check the cameras from home." "You can do that? We have the same system at our house. I'm sure my dad will let us use them." The two got up and headed for Endo Electronics. Achi decided to let his father know that they were coming. He turned on his phone as they walked along. He'd had it off for a while, so first he checked his voicemail. There was one message. Wondering who might have called, he played it back. "Is this Achi Endo's personal cell phone? This is Dr. Seiki from Shibuya Central Hospital. Seichi Seiki, heart specialist and Suzune's attending physician." Oh, right, because his sister has the heart thing. "A preeminent surgeon who has successfully performed the Batista procedure, wherein the left ventricle is reconstructed after a third of it has been removed." Achi's expression stiffened. He pressed the phone closer to his ear. "There's been a sudden change in Suzune's condition. Because of course there has. I tried calling your home as well, but got no answer." Achi felt the edges of his vision growing dim. "As her brother, it would be good if you can come to the hospital as soon as possible. It's..." "Achi?" Hitomi's voice was full of concern. "Sorry, I just gotta make a call here." Fingers trembling, Achi dialed his house. The phone rang several times before switching over to the answering machine. "Where the hell are you, Dad?" "What's wrong?" Hitomi asked. "It's Suzune. It sounds like things have gotten pretty bad." "Well, then we need to get to the hospital right away," Hitomi said. She sounded as anxious as Achi was. "We can't go yet." Achi shook his head quietly. "First we have to save your sister." Hitomi bristled angrily at that. "What are you talking about?" She grabbed Achi by the arm and shook him. "Right now you need to be thinking about your sister." "I can't. I made a promise to Suzune. A promise to help people and see things through to the end when something important is on the line." He struggled to get the words out. "If I break that promise, then I really am no good to her." But Hitomi didn't look like she was going to back down. "Oi, get back here!" A threatening shout rung from nearby, because something needed to break the tension. Achi looked around, startled, and saw a boy about high school age bolting out from behind a building on the side street. Several slightly young men were hot on his heels. Achi knew their faces all too well. They were all members of SOS. They caught their quarry just before he could make it out onto the main road. Heh, gotcha, newbie. So the kid they were after must have been a member too. Let me go. Oh, we'll let you go, all right. After you pay up. One of the young men snatched the boy by the collar and shoved him against the wall of a nearby building. Ow! The boy's face scrunched up. What are you talking about? Playing dumb, huh? Interjected one of the onlookers. We told you that members all have to pay monthly dues, yeah? The privilege of getting to call yourself SOS doesn't come free after all. Achi felt his blood broil. SOS was trying to pull a shakedown on this new kid under the guise of calling it dues. Shakedown! Slang for extortion! A full-fledged crime. Naturally, the direct shakedown, give me all your money, punk, is quite unpleasant, but more roundabout ways of being shaken down can still leave a bad taste in one's mouth. Someone who was surrounded in the street by 8 people in pompadours who said, "Begging your pardon, but could you please hand over your money?" might suffer no physical harm, but would still be the victim of a shakedown. It would have been unthinkable for them to do something like this back when Achi was running the show. Hey, he barked, let the kid go. He marched toward the group. Say what now? They turned to look, their faces immediately going pale. Oh, hey Achi. Let him go. Achi focused his glare on the fellow holding the kid until he released his grip. You guys always go around doing stuff like this? None of the gang members answered. They merely turned their gazes glumly to the ground. Hey, Achi turned to the younger boy. Since when have they been doing this? But of course he realized there was no way the newbie would be able to tell him. Never mind. You can go. Achi gestured toward the main road. The boy was quick to run off. Achi waited until the boy was gone before turning back to the others. Does Susumu know you're going around collecting dues like this? He asked. Man, we don't gotta tell you that, one of them muttered. Not since you deserted. What'd you just say? Achi leaned in close, getting right in the guy's face. He was met with a defiant sneer. This ain't the old SOS anymore. Not the old SOS? Achi thought back to the other gang member he'd run into earlier, with the malicious gleam in his eyes. That guy. Pretty sure he said his name was Kiryu? Back when Achi had been with the SOS, he'd never have let a guy like that get away with acting all high and mighty. Suddenly, Achi heard a voice from behind him. Well, well, if it ain't our legendary founder. An instant later, he took a hard blow to the side of the head. I was just out looking for some small fry, but looks like I landed a big one. Achi's head swam, his vision fading in and out. Before he had a chance to recover, something smashed into his knee. Oh. He crumpled on the ground, unable to retaliate, as kicks and punches rained down on him. Even after Achi could no longer move, the beating didn't stop. His ruptured eardrums could barely make out the sound of Hitomi screaming. Okay, so that's a bad end. Hitomi, run! With his final plea silenced before it reached his lips, Achi felt his consciousness battered away. Yep, bad end. Alright, Kiryu turned up out of nowhere and gave Achi a beatdown with a piece of timber. But just before he attacked Achi, Kiryu had run into someone else. That person said something that changed what Kiryu did. The individual in question needs to say something different to ensure Kiryu doesn't go to Dogenzaka while Achi and Hitomi are there. Alright. So, somebody's going to run into him at some point in a different timeline, and we have to tell him not to go there, or something. want to get it over with. Minorikawa is an annoying man. Minorikawa needed to get back to the editing office right away. But despite the urgency, he barely stumbled along. He was swaying on his feet, only half aware of where he was even going. No, this is all some sick joke. He just couldn't accept that Toyama was dead. He let out a lifeless sigh. A cynical smile crept onto his face. The man always did insist on having his own way. Killing himself? Back when he was still a novice reporter, Minorikawa had written a piece about a middle school girl who'd committed suicide. The school had made a statement denying that bullying had been a factor, and so most of the media had reported that she had suffered a nervous breakdown over entrance exams. Nervous breakdown, a period of mental illness manifesting as panic disorder, stress-induced anxiety, or the like. The term is commonly used to refer to serious health issues such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, as well as the buildup of more minor stresses as part of everyday life. Because it is so broadly and vaguely defined, it is generally avoided in psychiatric contexts. But something about the case had kept nagging at him. Had her death really been a suicide? The more people he interviewed about the incident, the more his doubts grew. The city news editor, however, would not allow him to conduct a follow-up investigation, and the reason why was simple. This was the sort of thing that happened every day. They couldn't waste time on a case that was already on the books. It was more important for a reporter to find news stories than to squander time engrossed in a case that was old news. Minorikawa understood the editor's decision well enough, but that didn't mean he had to like it. He'd been sulking up on the roof slowly, nursing a cigarette, when the paper's local news copy editor, Toyama, happened to drop by. A copy editor, and a newspaper, an employee who evaluates the quality and sustainability of reporters' copy and coverage, effectively the boss of a group of reporters. However, the copy editor typically works under a section editor who has the final say about what makes the page, a middle management position caught between upstart reporters and an angry section chief. Did they say no to the follow-up interviews? Toyama asked. About that girl's suicide? The name of the girl who killed herself was Chiharu Fuyutsuki. After reading her diary, Minorikawa became convinced it wasn't an ordinary suicide. 6 years from now, Minorikawa will run into a certain teacher, and the investigation into the student's death will be reopened. But that's another story for another time. Game! Yeah. Minorikawa expelled a plume of smoke along his side. With a sigh. Nothing tasted quite as bad as a cigarette when he was down in the dumps. I'd argue nothing tastes quite as bad as a cigarette any time, but I think they smell nasty. So, what are you going to do? I'm not going to do anything, Minorikawa said. Editor told me no. Oh, editor said not to. You sound like a child. The rebuff made Minorikawa's temper flare. There are other interviews to do. I want to follow up on this, but there isn't any time. You dumbass. Toyama hauled off and hit him right across the face. What happened to, I write what I feel in my heart, that's the one thing I refuse to back down on. What happened to the guy who used to be at me like that? Toyama's words hit their mark with painful precision. The interviews aren't over until you have what you need. No, you refuse to let them be over. You go after the truth no matter what anyone tells you. Isn't that what being a journalist is all about? Minorikawa scowled in chagrin. The man was exactly right. Until you have what you need. Those words had stuck with Minorikawa ever since. In fact, he'd quit the paper to become a freelancer because he couldn't do his job the way he wanted while trapped in that hierarchy. Now he wondered, what if Toyama hadn't killed himself, but had instead been the victim of a terrorist attack? But after considering the idea for a moment, he thought bitterly, so what? The reasons and the details hardly mattered at this point. What mattered was that Toyama was dead. Minorikawa sat down listlessly and stared up at the sky. The blank swath of blue made him feel all the more worn out. Just what had all the days running around been for? He felt so empty, so hollowed out by loss. All his motivation had drained away. He had no idea what he should do next. Hey, Minoru Kawa, what should you do? He tried to listen to his inner voice. Let's just forge ahead. Stand up, right now. You just need to forge ahead. Yeah, that was his only option, really. He couldn't just let things end like this. Lurker's Spine! Hey, thank you for that 8-month resub. Welcome back. And he still didn't have what he needed for his article, so... Minarakawa took a deep breath, ready to get back on his feet. Before he could, however, a young man stumbled across his path, taking a nasty fall on the pavement. Ow, that hurts. The youngster scrambled back to his feet and turned to Minarakawa with a snarl. What are you looking at, pal? The young man clutched a piece of timber like a club. There was a nasty gleam in his eyes. Hey, we found the guy that we don't want to go into a different timeline. I'm not looking at anything, Minarakawa sighed. I just happen to be looking in your direction. Shut your yap. Apologize, now. The punk raised his cudgel. What for? You've tripped me, man. Ain't you gonna apologize for that? The kid had stumbled all on his own. Was probably too embarrassed to admit it. Guess he's gotta vent his anger at someone. Listen, kid, Minarakawa said. It's not my fault you're such a klutz. Fun fact, klutz. You know, like the pedal in a car that's got a manual transmission? Oh, no, wait, that's a clutch. Okay, so then like lumps of earth or clay... No, those are clods, you say. Right, so then we're talking about a sort of social get-together for coffee and conversation. Huh? Oh, right, that's clashed. Is it when you try to fix something using stuff that isn't really meant for that purpose? Oh, that's a clutch. Okay. Hi, game. What was that? The hell you just say to me? You got a death wish, pal? With a murderous glare, the punk advanced on him, brandishing his weapon. Hey, Minarakawa said. I don't know, is it fun hitting people with that thing? The corner of the punk's mouth curled up. Oh yeah, real fun. Only a dumbass beats people with their bare hands. You just wind up hurting your fists. If you're gonna enjoy some violence, you gotta have yourself a weapon. Aha, I see. In that case, maybe give it a rest with that stick, yeah? Huh? What for? The punk scowled in irritation. Don't get me wrong, Minarakawa said. I'm just saying there have to be better weapons than that. Something that could take a man down in a single blow. The kid stopped to consider Minarakawa's words for a moment. I get ya. Yeah, you might be right about that. And I think I have just the thing. May as well go with my usual... He tossed away the piece of wood on the side of the road. Don't you go anywhere till I get back. Got it? Oh yeah, people totally stick around for shit like that. Yeah, sure thing. Minarakawa watched as the punk headed back the way he'd come. Man, he murdered. What a dumbass. Looking around, he spotted a taxi parked close by. Hey, it's taxi friend. Kimizuka. Need a ride, sir? Kimizuka asked. All politeness as he opened the back door. If you're heading to that publishing office again, I can get you there in 10 minutes. Kimizuka's driving was as smooth as always. He wove his way skillfully through a series of back streets. There was some big explosion earlier, he explained. The main roads are all gridlocked. Yeah, Minarakawa muttered. I was there when it happened. Oh wow, really? Glad to see you're not hurt then. Still, what a terrible thing. That minivan... I hear someone was inside it when it exploded. I'm not sure if you were aware. Yeah, I'm aware. Oh ho! Nothing gets past a reporter like you, I see. Kimizuki flashed Minarakawa an approving smile through the rearview mirror. How much have you heard then? Rumor has it that the person who died was a middle-aged man. Oh? Huh? We taxi drivers tend to hear quite a bit ourselves. Kimizuka chuckled, but Minarakawa just cast his eyes down forlornly. You look tired, sir. Yeah, I guess so. His reply was barely audible. Suddenly, someone rushed out into the street right in front of the cab. Look out! Okay, how many times is Achi going to die, really? There was a heavy thunk as the taxi crashed into the pedestrian. Screeching to a halt, Kimizuki and Minorukawa jumped out of the vehicle to find a young man splayed out on the street. Hey, the driver called. You alright? The fallen pedestrian was practically still. A kid, and he wasn't moving. Kimizuki hunkered down and jostled his shoulder. Then his expression stiffened in alarm. Minorukawa checked the young man's pulse, but couldn't detect any heartbeat. Oh no, Kimizuki said. This is... Tears began to well up in his eyes. Minorukawa turned to him in surprise. You knew him? I did. I didn't know the taxi driver knew him. Kimizuki cradled the young man in his arms. Sorry, but you'll have to find yourself another taxi, he said. I'm going to turn myself into the police. Looking down at the boy's unmoving form, Minorukawa felt a pang of guilt. No, he said. I'm the one who's been asking you to drive around so recklessly all day. This is on me too. But I'll go with you to the cops. The two men decided to head to the station together to surrender themselves. And then Heather got a bad end, because that is clearly what is about to happen. There probably wouldn't be time to work on writing articles while they were being interrogated. But that was just how it'd have to be. This was the right thing to do. Minorukawa just had to keep telling himself that, knowing that it was the truth. Minorukawa's day ended in disaster when the taxi he was riding in hit a young man who ran into the street. But why did the kid rush out into the intersection like that? The answer lies in Achi's story. Alright. Give me that time chart. Right. Well, dude doesn't have stick anymore, so maybe he survives here and then we can stop him from dying in the other timeline. Alright. Can I skip forward through this stuff? Right. Kuryu. This is where he gets hit in the back of the head. Now it seemed like all these young fellows were ready to follow suit, eager to take him down a peg. You're old news, pal. Ain't your business to tell us how to do things. Achi felt a confusing flood of anger and sadness that he couldn't quite control. I'm not messing around here, you guys. He grabbed the nearest punk by the collar and hefted him up in the air. Then someone shouted from behind him. Hey, what are you doing? Achi put the guy down and turned around to see Susumu standing there. Mind telling me just what's going on here, Achi? Susumu flashed his underlings a sharp glare. They immediately took to their heels. Racing after them seems like a bad idea, so let's just ask him. What's going on with the SOS? Achi needed to talk to Susumu. I asked what was going on here. There was a threatening note in Susumu's voice. That's what I want to know. What the hell's happened to the SOS, man? Susumu's face twisted with displeasure. You're an outsider now. It's none of your business. I don't give a damn if it's not my business. When I left you in charge of SOS, You shut your damn mouth, Susumu roared. Yeah, that's right. You left me in charge. Don't you dare give me any lip about how I run things. His sudden ferocity left Achi at a loss for words. You're not the one busting your ass out here. I am. Susumu stalked toward Achi, his face red with emotion. I've had to work so hard to keep things going with you gone. Do you have any idea what it's been like? Do you know what I've had to put myself through to keep SOS together? There was nothing Achi could say to that. He just kept his mouth shut and let Susumu talk. You were gone. I thought maybe I could do things like you did. All at once, Susumu seemed to deflate a little. He hung his head, hiding his face. And if I couldn't be like you, then... Hey man, I get it. I'm sorry. But Susumu kept his face averted. Please, he muttered. Stay out of our business. Then he turned on his heel and walked off, without looking back. Achi watched him leave, feeling a painful sting. But it's not the painful sting of a car hitting you, or a piece of wood, right? You're gonna be alive now? Achi, Hitomi asked after Susumu was gone. Are you sure you're okay leaving things like this? Achi shrugged heavily. Susumu said he's doing what he can. It's not my place to butt in. He turned his back on Hitomi. He still needed a moment. Achi, you're being unreasonable. About what? He felt like he'd been wounded to his very core, and he wasn't sure what to do about it. You want to help people who are in trouble, right? Hitomi asked quietly. Yeah, I guess. Achi's voice was glum. Well, I'm in a whole lot of trouble right now. Yeah, I know that. No, Achi, you don't. Hitomi's tone was clipped and firm. Please, go to your sister. What are you talking about? That doesn't matter now. Yes, it does. Hitomi's shout stopped him in his tracks. Achi, right now the thing I'm having the most trouble with is that you won't go to the hospital. Don't you get it? How can I possibly be happy with you helping me if you have to sacrifice your own sister to do it? Achi couldn't answer that, and he knew it. Please, go to the hospital. I'm asking you to, and I'm definitely someone in trouble, so it doesn't count as breaking your promise, right? I appreciate that, Achi said softly. Let's not split up. So yeah, how about we drop by the hospital for a bit? The emotions Achi had been trying to hide now came welling to the surface. We'll go see Susune, and after that we can go look for your sister. Would that be okay with you? That would be more than okay with me. And at long last, Hitomi smiled at him. Back in sync with each other, Achi and Hitomi headed to the hospital, and Achi stopped dying in this timeline forever. Right? Cool. We made it safely to a hospital. Shibuya Central Hospital was one of the foremost general hospitals in Japan, outfitted with top-notch medical facilities and staffed by highly skilled personnel. Individuals like Susune with rare blood types, oh right, that's right, she's got like the super rare ultra blood type thing, were sent to the hospital from far and wide because of its cutting-edge hematology center. The hospital division that deals with blood, its goal is to provide high-end care to patients with blood disorders, including blood screening, treatments, transfusions, the management and supply of blood products, and other related services. Achi asked Hitomi to stay in the waiting area while he headed into the hospital proper. From the visitor's entrance, he passed by the nurse's station and entered the cardiovascular medicine section and walked along a row of examination rooms. The cardiovascular system includes the heart, as well as the various blood vessels that circulate blood throughout the body. Cardiovascular medicine deals with heart and blood issues such as angina, heart attacks, heart failure, irregular pulse, and the like. Oh, the like. The worst. He walked by the first room, as quietly as possible, catching sight of a mother and daughter sitting together in chairs in the hallway. The mother was crying softly. Oh, Takia, he's only 15, she murmured under her breath. The name Takia didn't ring a bell. It was the only 15 that got a reaction out of Achi. Only 15. He couldn't imagine anything good coming after that. To be cruelly taken away when one is still so young, Achi could feel the woman's pain as deeply as if it were his own. When he reached Susune's room, Dr. Seiki, the attending physician, explained her condition. The doctor did his best to keep his explanation simple, but Achi was too worked up to process much of what he said. He did manage to wrap his head around a few things. At around 10 o'clock that morning, Susane had had a seizure. For a while it had been touch and go, but finally her condition had stabilized. However, since she hadn't regained consciousness yet, she wasn't allowed any visitors. That was the gist, as far as Achi could tell. "What's your father doing today?" "He still hasn't come by," Dr. Seiki said. Achi wasn't sure what to tell him. It was certainly odd. There was no way his father wouldn't have rushed right to the hospital if he'd heard Susane had taken a turn for the worse. "I'll give you a call once she's woken up. For now, you can head on home for the day." "All right. Please keep a close eye on her, doctor." Somberly, Achi went to find Hitomi in the waiting area. Outpatient reception had closed for the day, leaving the hospital quiet. His footsteps echoed softly in the corridors. Then as he walked along, a peculiar sound drew his attention. It had come from over by the base of a nearby stairwell. Achi took a peek around the corner. The sight that greeted him nearly made him gasp aloud. In the dim light up ahead, he saw Kanan, and she had some white guy pressed against the wall, a knife to his throat. Achi quickly yanked his head back out of view. Could it be? Was this the man Kanan said she was after? Achi had to resist the urge to go charging out there. Some amateur heading in half-cocked might well be more of a liability to Kanan than any other sort of help. He heard her mutter something to the man in English. "We know nothing about Alfred's background, nationality, sex, age." Achi could just barely make out the words, but since it was all in English, he had no idea what they meant. "But we do know that whoever they are, they have connections to Langley." Langley, slang for the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, headquartered in Langley, Virginia. Similar to referring to the Japanese government as Nagatacho, the CIA has other nicknames including the Company, the Agency, the Second Government, the Invisible Government, and the Coup Makers. Alright. Hachi peeked out again, very cautiously, in time to see the man raise an eyebrow at Kanan's words. "Interesting. That doesn't mean you need to threaten me at knife point, though." He flashed her a thin smile. "It does, actually. Because I happen to know that you're a CIA agent." Technically known as officers, the CIA refers to its own spies as agents. Someone in charge of directing agents is called a case officer. Case officers are stationed at embassies across the world in the public guise of diplomats, soldiers, and the like. No sooner were Kan's words out than the man grabbed her arm and tried to hurl her against the wall. Just before her head connected, though, she jackknifed her upper body forward, then planted both feet against the wall and kicked off with tremendous force. We did not take a picture of that part. She used her momentum to launch herself forward, regaining her position with her knife against the man's throat. But during his brief opening, the man had managed to draw a gun from inside his jacket. Now the barrel was pressed right against Kanan's heart. Achi swallowed the lump in his throat. "How about we call a truce?" Kanan said softly. She withdrew her knife. "Yeah, sounds like you and me are both after the same thing." The man likewise lowered his gun. With a faint smile, Kanan turned her back on him and vanished down the adjacent stairwell. Achi had no idea what had just happened. They'd stopped fighting, though, so this guy probably wasn't Kanan's mastermind after all. If only Achi spoke a little English, he might have been able to follow their conversation. No, I doubt that. He found himself wishing he'd taken school more seriously. When he looked again, he saw that the man too had disappeared. Remember, kids, it's always good to learn and take seriously your discussions in school, because when this stuff happens, you won't know what to do. Take school seriously for that chance in the hallway that you see where somebody can get into an altercation with an FBI officer. Yeah, that's a good lesson. Hitomi stood up from her chair as Achi hurried into the waiting area. How's Suzune? She asked. For now, she's not in any immediate danger, they said. That's good to hear. But more importantly, Cannon was here just now. What? Why? I'm not sure. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. Right. I'm sorry, CIA agent, not FBI. Fair enough. Hachi slumped his shoulders. Huh? What? I'm not quite sure what you mean. Exactly. I couldn't understand anything she was saying. Hell, he couldn't even figure out how to get through to Hitomi. May I have a moment? A voice spoke unexpectedly from behind Achi. His breath caught in his throat. He's turning around. Standing there was the man Cannon had been struggling with. What's up? Achi asked. He tried to sound as nonchalant as possible, but the man wasn't looking at Achi. Of course not. You're Hitomi Osawa, is that right? Yes? Hey, Achi snapped. Keep your distance. He stepped protectively in front of Hitomi. This guy, he's not what he looks like. Achi clenched his fists and adopted a defensive posture. Huh? Hitomi seemed panicked. Achi said, I don't know who he is, but he's not our friend. The man calmly reached into his jacket pocket. Fearing he might be about to draw his gun, Achi braced for action. My name is Jack Stanley. I'm a security assistance officer with the U.S. Embassy. Achi held back his punch as the man held out his ID card. ID cards. Diplomats are issued diplomatic passports and diplomatic ID cards by their home governments. Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs also issues its own form of diplomatic identification card. The CIA provides such identification to its operatives working overseas to help maintain their false identities. This expired at the end of 2009. Embassy? What does someone from the U.S. Embassy want with me? Hitomi asked timidly. You're being targeted by a dangerous criminal. I'm here to take you into protective custody. Custody? Achi's temper flared. Buzz off, pal. We're busy here. Busy searching for Maria Osawa? Stanley asked. Achi and Hitomi exchanged glances. I know the full details of the trouble you currently find yourselves in. Well, all right then, Achi said. Then you should know that we don't have time to be taken into custody. I'm afraid you don't understand the situation we're dealing with. We're up against a dangerous international criminal here. Taking reckless action is only going to put her life in danger. Don't be a fool. This is no time to play the knight in shining armor. Hey. Achi was infuriated, but he couldn't think of a comeback. After all, it was true that Hitomi had run into danger time and again while she was with him. But I'm already safe, Hitomi insisted. I'm only here right now because Achi has been protecting me. She eyed Stanley sharply. I've got Achi with me. I don't need your protection. Achi felt a surge of pride that practically brought tears to his eyes. If Hitomi would have let him, he'd have given her an enormous hug. Stanley grimaced in resignation. All right. In that case, how about I join your search for Maria? I can help keep you safe that way instead. I don't know. Hitomi grabbed hold of Achi's sleeve. The Stanley fellow didn't have the most trustworthy face, Achi thought. But he realized that he might be biased after being chased around by foreigners all day. After all, if this guy really was after Hitomi, he'd probably have already made a show of force. Not only did he have a gun on him, he was sufficiently skilled in martial arts to hold his own against Cannon. He'd have no trouble taking down a single unarmored opponent like Achi. Hitomi, I get the impression the Stanley guy's not our enemy right now. Hitomi gave a slight nod. All right. I trust your judgment on this, Achi. Now then, what's the plan from here? Stanley asked. Not wandering aimlessly around town, I hope. There was a trace of snidiness in his voice. You can just keep your mouth shut, Achi replied. We can wander around town all day if we feel like it. Two could play the snarky game, he thought to himself. Poor Hitomi looked distressed. Very well, if that's what you want, I can stay quiet. But first I need to inform the police that I have Miss Osawa in my custody. Wait, hold on, Hitomi blurted. That isn't a good idea. Stanley inclined his head. Why's that? Well, since you already seem to know most of the story. Hitomi quickly explained the kidnapper's threat and described the search for the minivan. Stanley remained quiet, listening with obvious interest. I see, he said, when she'd finished. Still, when that minivan exploded, didn't that make your promise to the kidnappers a moot point? Hitomi nodded. I suppose it did, didn't it? Let me just ask you one more question. Do either of you know a detective by the name of Tatano? No, we haven't run into any detectives. Yeah, exactly. The only folks we seem to run into are guys who are after Hitomi. I see. A grim expression crossed Stanley's face. Right. I'm going to get in touch with the investigation task force. I'll have them contact your parents for you. Hey, Mamo. How's it going? Would you mind speaking with them so they can confirm it's really you? Sure, all right, Hitomi said. Stanley got on his wireless and described the current circumstances to the police. Mr. Endo, hold on. Suddenly, Dr. Seki appeared, running down the hallway. There's something I forgot to tell you, regarding your father. Oh? Hachi got a sinking feeling. I got a call from him yesterday afternoon, and he asked me something rather odd. All right. Preparations for a transplant? I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure I understand what you're asking. Seki clutched the receiver. Daisuke Endo's brooding tone was more than a little disturbing. No, it's all right, Endo said. This is all just difficult to talk about, Doctor. Please forget I said anything. There's just one important thing I wanted to let you know. Yes? There's going to be a brain-dead woman coming your way at probably around 9 o'clock this evening, I expect. Her blood type is Bombay. Bombay was extremely rare blood type that Endo's daughter, Susune, possessed. Any transplant donor for Susune would also need to have the Bombay blood type. Since she has the same blood type as Susune, the transplant itself isn't an issue, Endo continued. The only thing I'm concerned about is whether the procedure can be done within the limited time window. I hate to trouble you, but I just called because I think it would be best to prepare for the surgery as soon as possible. The more Seki heard, the more disturbed he grew. Felt like he was listening this man go on about some strange delusion. Doctor, please, just take good care of Susune. With that, Endo hung up. Hachi kept quiet as he listened to Dr. Seki tell his story. Of course, that was yesterday, and I still haven't heard anything about a brain-dead girl turning up. After all, only God would know when someone would wind up in a state of brain death. But still, there was just something very strange about what your father said. It was as if he was certain that someone was going to wind up brain-dead or... Just stop right there, Hachi exclaimed. Stanley and Hitomi turned in surprise. They were still in the middle of their wireless call to the police. Don't get me wrong, the doctor said hastily. I'm not trying to imply that your father would hurt anyone. What I'm worried about is your father's mental state, and... No, Hachi interrupted him again. That's not it. His own words from earlier spun within his head. So long as we have those cameras, this guy has nowhere to run. The security cameras. I'm sure this is the place. The man with the cane. He'd been on the phone with someone. That didn't mean anything. It was just a coincidence. It couldn't be true. I didn't think the sister part would be that intricated into this plot. And she searched desperately for some other explanation. That was it. Anyone from downtown committee could have used the camera monitoring room. Yeah, no one's been by to check today. Nothing wrong with a little nap, yeah? No dice. No one from downtown had been by the surveillance room today. It couldn't be. It couldn't. And she began to tremble. Is something the matter? Hitomi asked. Achi, you're pale as a ghost. Achi gazed beseechingly back into her face. With just one simple question, he could clear this whole thing up. Please tell me I'm overthinking this. He prayed inwardly before asking. Oh, goodness. Hitomi, would you mind telling me your blood type? Why do you ask? Please, just tell me. I have a sort of weird blood type, Hitomi said. It's called Bombay. Dun dun dun. The last piece of the puzzle fell into place. There was no longer any room for doubt. Ashi found himself facing a sad and painful truth. Why? Why? With an anguished scream, Achi punched the wall as hard as he could. But his fist still didn't hurt as much as his heart. Dad, why? I like this girl. Oh, wow, we got to the end of the chapter for that. Yeah, the game said Bombay blood type was, like, really rare. It's the rarest blood type, supposedly. First found in Bombay, Mumbai, in India, hence called Bombay blood group. It is observed to occur in 1 out of every 250,000 people, except in parts of India where the incident has observed to be as much as 1 in every 7,600. Yeah, it's a separate... It's basically like the O type, except not. It's very weird. It's incredibly rare. This is also the first time I've heard about a Bombay blood type. Alright, so we've got you down. You have a keep out. Norikawa's got a thing going on. Let's go check in with the detective. Arriving back at the Shibuya precinct, Kano hurried to the interrogation room. With the investigation currently on hold, he knew that taking any official action would be tricky. If he was going to break through this stalemate, he was going to need Tatano's help. The abduction, the ransom, the attaché case relay, Maria's release, and then Tanaka's death. Maybe Tatano would be able to figure out how all these elements were related. But first, Kano needed to check something for himself. Tatano would never have let Al Karawan go free. Kano needed the prisoner to set the record straight. Al Karawan sat in the precinct interrogation room, looking brazen and cocksure. One glance at his face, and Kano was reminded of what had happened to Sasame. Fresh anger smoldered at the edges of his mind. There were two detectives already in the room. It seems he wasn't made privy to the details, one of them told Kano. Sounds like they were following orders carrying that attaché case around, the other added. Kano sat down across from Al Karawan. There's something I'd like to ask you, he said. We were just paid to do a job. I don't know anything more than that. His Japanese was imperfect, but he understood the language well enough. Tell me, how did you manage to escape from Detective Tatano? Escape? I didn't. A faint smile came to Al Karawan's lips. He let me go free. Liar. Detective Tatano would never do that. Kano slammed the desk with his fist. I didn't have handcuffs on, did I? He took them off for me. This had to be a lie. It's not like there were other ways to remove a pair of handcuffs. After he took off the handcuffs, Alcarawan continued, he pointed his gun at me. Cut the crap. Kano grabbed the prisoner by the collar, but Alcarawan went on, unperturbed. He kept the gun pointed at me, but he didn't pull the trigger, so that's when I ran. Why would Detective Tatano want to shoot you? Because I saw him. Saw him? Saw him do what? Let me tell you something interesting, Alcarawan said sardonically. There was this girl who was carrying the ransom, right? Kano pictured Hitomi standing anxiously beside the statue of Hachiko. That guy Tatano was trying to kill her. Oh wait, is he the man with the cane? In a fit of rage, Kano drove his fist into Alcarawan's face. His colleagues rushed to interpose themselves. Kano, calm down. Knocked to the floor, Alcarawan gingerly fingered his split lip. And after I gave you such good info too, he grumbled. Detective Tano was assigned to protect Hitomi Osawa, Kano shouted. You can't expect me to believe your rubbish. He lunged around the table, ready to throw another punch, but his fellow detectives held him back. Alcarawan looked away indifferently. It's your Detective Tatano you should be arresting, not me. That girl's going to get killed. You need to step in line, pal, Kano bellowed. Kano, his colleague shouted. You're the one who needs to step in line. Go and cool off for a bit. Expelled from the interrogation room, Kano immediately pulled out his cell phone and called Tatano's number. Please pick up. He clutched his phone tight, pleading under his breath. But Tatano didn't answer. Kano sat down in a chair in the hallway in a bit of a daze. He found himself holding the present Sasayama had gotten for his wife. I have to do something. I just don't know what I'm supposed to do. His restlessness gnawed at him like a rabid animal. Hey, Kano. He looked up to see Kuze standing beside him, his expression grave. I have an update on Sasayama, the director began. Kano swallowed the lump in his throat. It seems the knife went in deep enough to do some organ damage. He's in critical condition. I see. Kano bit his lip hard. His handkerchief, red with Sasayama's blood, clung to the wrapping paper of Sasayama's present. Kano peeled it away carefully, so as not to tear the paper beneath. What's that? Asked Kuze. Sasayama had me hold on to this for him. It's a present for his wife. Ah, I see. I'm sorry, Director Kuze, for ignoring your orders. Kano's eyes remained fixed on the gift as he spoke. When you get down to it, none of this would have happened if it weren't for me. Some kind of punishment was surely headed his way for acting alone as he had. He probably wasn't getting out of this one with a simple written apology. Written apologies! When public servants are negligent in their duties or violate regulations, they can be punished with a warning, a formal reprimand, reduction in pay, suspension, or dismissal. In the case of a warning, in addition to the remonstration from a direct supervisor, the individual must also submit a formal letter explaining the relevant details and assuring that it won't happen again. But Kuze calmly shook his head. What happened to Sasayama isn't your fault. Don't blame yourself, he said. As far as this case goes, I've been given quite the runaround myself. There was a rare note of vulnerability in Kuze's voice. The higher-ups have barely let any information trickle my way, but they're still ordering me around non-stop. It's a real pain in the ass. Kuze fell silent, ruminating. The quiet lingered between the two men for several moments before he abruptly spoke again. Oh, right. I'd like to get your opinion on something. So, Mamoru Tanaka, who we found in the minivan, you know? What you think? Should we maybe release his name to the media? Kuze had slipped into his childish register. He was clearly exhausted. After dealing with the kidnapper's baffling actions and too much meddling from the higher-ups, even a veteran like Kuze is just beat. But that's not the only reason for his exhaustion. Kuze has a brother, 6 years his senior, who despite being nominally mature, refuses to get a real job and shows no inclination to settle down with a family. He walks around town day after day, dressed like a hippie and treating a passerby to songs he's written. Kusei has now been worrying about his shiftless brother for years. The guy's become a chronic source of consternation. Keno was thrown by the question. It was a rare thing for the director to seek an opinion from a mere junior detective. It feels like there's something not too normal about one of Kenji Osawa's subordinates dying, Kusa went on. Keno had had the same thought. This felt too intentional to be a coincidence. So here's the question. Should I get the media involved and try to rush for a resolution? Or should I be more cautious? What would you do? About releasing the name? Keno asked. That wasn't such a simple thing to answer. There were so many factors to consider. A tired smile came to Kusa's face. Don't think about it so hard. This is just how I have a point of reference. Tell me what your gut says. We're like in the middle of an investigation. It seems like releasing that name would be bad, but it might do something for our reporter friend, who seems to think his friend was in that van and wasn't. No, we're doing it. I'm gonna release the name. And I'm probably gonna regret it because I'll probably get a bad end for that. There's a lot they still didn't know about Tanaka. The fact that the final stop for the ransom relay was Tanaka's condo implied some sort of connection between him and the kidnappers. But they still had no idea what his role in the abduction might have been. They also didn't have any motive for why Tanaka would be helping the kidnappers in the first place. If this was solely all the information I had, I would probably also be like, hold back. But I am hoping that by releasing the name, that might help Minorikawa in a different timeline. By sharing some of what they did know with the public, they might be able to garner some new leads. You'd release the name? Alright then. Without another word, Kusei headed back toward the conference room. On the TV, the governor's press conference was still going on. I've just requested that each of the railroad companies, starting with JR, stop running trains through Shibuya Station until further notice. As far as roads go, Route 246 has already been closed to traffic. The executive looked pale as he spoke to the crowd. Is there any possibility of a bioterrorist attack? What about the people who are still in Shibuya? The reporters unleashed a barrage of questions. The governor's face scrunched up. As I've already made clear, this is not a complete blockade. Complete blockade. Because modern Japan does not have a system for enacting martial law, there are few ways that the government could effectively quarantine Shibuya. In the case of potential viral infection, the infectious disease law allows for the city to be partitioned into areas of restricted movement. If the authorities do not want to acknowledge the existence of the top-secret UA virus, however, taking such an action would be rather tricky legally. Huh. There's nothing to stop anyone from leaving Shibuya on foot. Isn't what you're describing de facto martial law? Spat one reporter. Of course not, the governor snapped. You should be well aware that martial law is illegal. I couldn't declare it even if I wanted to. If you wanted to? So this is a bioterrorist attack then. Issue, not necessarily attack. I never said anything of the sort. The press conference was devolving into chaos. Kano was unsurprised given the circumstances. Still, everyone was doing their best insofar that they knew how. So why not me, Kano thought. It doesn't matter what I do. I just want to be doing something. Just letting time tick by without trying to take action was more than he could bear. Kano. Let's go visit Sasayama. Kano was worried about Sasayama and decided to visit him in the hospital. As he was making his way toward the hospital, Kano spotted a girl sitting on the pedestrian overpass. She looked like she was on the verge of tears. Concerned, he stopped beside her. Are you waiting for someone? He asked. The girl simply bit her lip and said nothing. Are you lost? Do you need a policeman? A policeman. The relatively low crime rate in Japan, combined with rather high police personnel numbers in Tokyo, mean that officers, particularly beat cops, often have plenty of bandwidth to deal with more minor issues. Again, the girl gave no answer. Where did you come from? Kano tried. Still nothing. He had just decided to go and call for a female officer when the girl hesitantly spoke at last. Heaven Publishing. After a little coaxing, she told him where that was. It turned out that it was on the way to Shibuya Central Hospital, not too far from where they were now. Why don't I take you there then? Kano said. I'm already headed in that direction anyway. The girl seemed a bit reluctant at first, but eventually she agreed to go with Kano. Kano parted ways with the girl outside of the building where Heaven Publishing was located. He noticed that she hesitated to enter at first, but eventually vanished inside. Kano's phone rang as he was about to continue on his way. When he peered at the incoming call display, his heart nearly stopped. There was Tateno's name. Kano quickly pressed the button to accept the call. Detective Tateno? Detective Tateno, is that you? There was a whole mountain of things Kano wanted to ask. Just what had he been doing this whole time? Why had he let Al Karawan go free? What had happened to Hitomi? But while he was trying to decide what question to pose first, Tateno spoke. This is the daughter of the guy who... Yeah, that's, Hannah. She's, that guy's name is... Toyama? Yeah, she's the daughter of the guy who runs the publishing tabloid thing. I've secured Maria Osawa. What? The word came out as a startled gasp. Detective Tateno, you have to bring her here ASAP. Right now she's... Tateno cut him off. You need to bring Hitomi Osawa to my location at once. Hitomi Osawa? Yes. I heard over the wireless that the man from the U.S. Embassy had her in custody. Kano hadn't been listening to the most recent wireless traffic. Apparently Stanley had managed to find Hitomi. But what was Tateno getting at here? Wait, hold on. What for? I mean, why do you need me to bring Hitomi Osawa to you? There was no reply. Detective Tateno, answer me, please. Tateno replied as if he hadn't heard Kano's questions. There's an office building in Nanapeidai called South Hill. I'll be waiting for you on the rooftop. If you don't bring her, I'll kill Maria. With that grisly warning, he hung up. Kano's hand went limp. His phone slipped from his grasp and fell to the floor. Kano went to South Hill in Nanapeidai alone. Oh no, this is a bad ending. South Hill. The building takes its name from a rough translation of Nanapeidai, the name of the area where it is located. The official name is South Hill Building, but since this is awkward to say, it is frequently shortened. He hadn't brought Hitomi as Tateno had demanded, nor had he reported the situation to Kuze. First, he wanted to meet with Tateno and find out what was going on. He took the elevator to the 8th floor. After that, he had to take the stairs to the rooftop. As he made his way up to the steps, he tried to imagine what Tateno might want with Hitomi. He hadn't noticed anything suspicious about the senior detective in the lead-up to the stakeout at the Scramble. Tateno had seemed like the same man Kano had always revered. So why was he doing this? Kano couldn't think of a reason. Reaching the top of the staircase, he at last stepped out onto the open roof. The time for half-baked conjecture was past. Kano would lay his doubts at Tateno's feet. Then, soon enough, everything would become clear. Inwardly, Kano did his best to convince himself of that. A warm breeze blew against his cheek. He took a look around, but saw no sign of Tateno. Detective Tateno, where are you? Getting no response, he began to walk around the rooftop, calling out several more times. It's Kano! I've come as you asked! Where's Hitomi Osawa? Kano whirled around when he heard the voice behind him. It is the man with the cane. Huh. Tateno stepped into view from behind a water tank. He led with him a young woman, bound and blindfolded. Why didn't you bring her? He growled. Kano stared in shock. Detective Tatano, why are you doing this? Is that really Maria? There's a jump point. Tatano responded by removing the young woman's blindfold. There was no doubt about it. She looked very much like Hitomi Osawa. A surge of frustration rushed through Kano. Detective Tatano, what is the meaning of this? Kano fought to remain calm. He felt like he was on the verge of falling to pieces. Bring me Hitomi Osawa, and I'll let this girl go. Why? What do you need Hitomi for? But Tatano's only answer was an icy stare. This isn't like you. It's so weird. The Detective Tatano who I know, who you know? Tatano cut him off. What do you know about me? I know what sort of detective you are, sir, because I've modeled myself after you for my whole career. The older man's expression remained stony. Don't you remember, Kano went on? That time when you risked your life to talk down that man who barricaded himself inside the office? Ever since then, you've been my... Tatano interrupted him with a sudden burst of laughter. You really are gullible, you know that. You can only see things the way you want to see them. What do you mean by that? The truth is, I didn't even care if I died doing what I did. That's why I doused myself in gasoline. Tatano's voice had gone low and quiet. That was no display of heroics. It was more attempted suicide than anything else. I wasn't thinking about the other people still inside the building. It's just a coincidence things turned out the way they did. Alright. So then, if you'd made a single misstep, then everyone in that building might well have burned to death. You're lying. That can't be true. Kano shook his head insistently. I don't have time for this conversation. Tatano pressed the barrel of the gun to Maria's head. If you don't bring Hitomi Osawa to me, believe me, I'll blow her brains out. Please stop this, Kano shouted. But there was no hesitation in Tatano's eyes. He looked like he really would shoot Maria if Kano didn't do as he asked. Hurry up! Bring Hitomi to me. Can't you at least tell me what's going on? Go now, or so help me, I'll shoot. Kano drew his own gun from his jacket. I know you, Detective Tatano. I know there's some meaning behind all of this. Kano's words came out as an imploring croak. You think you can shoot me? Tatano spat. Letting Al Karawan go free. Taking Maria hostage. This has to mean something. Sweat made Kano's hands slick where he clutched his gun. I asked if you think you can shoot me. I've always looked up to you. You were the sort of detective I wanted to become. Kano's view of Tatano began to blur as tears welled up in his eyes. Can you shoot me, Kano? I can. Even as he cried, Kano stood resolutely, doing his best to stare down the older man. He set his finger squarely on the trigger and pointed his gun at Tatano's forehead. Suddenly, the piercing stare vanished from the other detective's eyes. I've got to give you full marks for that, Kano. Tatano smiled thinly. I'll tell you then. I'll tell you why I'm doing this. Oh shoot, am I not doing a bad ending? Oh, maybe this is okay. And then the bad end sign happened, and it wasn't. Oh, no, maybe we're still good. It all happened 17 years ago. A meth addict had assaulted someone in Shibuya. Flashback. Tatano was questioning people around Dogenzaka in search of the perp. He happened to pass by Endo Electronics. Oh, hey, Tatano. It was Kotone Endo, clad in pristine white. Clutched to her breast was her daughter, Suzune, only a few months old. It's been a long time, Kotone said. She flashed a tiny smile. Yes, it has, Tatano replied with a clumsy smile of his own. Are you on the job? Yes, I am. Kotone recoiled slightly at the dour look in Tatano's face. Is something the matter? There's an armed criminal hiding out somewhere in the area. What? I wouldn't leave the shop for a while if you can avoid it. But I have to go to the bank to deposit some money. Surely you can have Daisuke do it. He's away on a repair job and hasn't come back yet. Tatano let out a one-note sigh. I see, Daisuke still does things his own way. Alright, let me escort you to the bank. You mean it? I'd feel a lot safer having you with me. Oh no, is this where she dies? Kotone flashed him a smile so wide that Tatano thought he might lose himself in it. Yeah. Tatano, Kotone, and Daisuke were childhood friends and had gone to school together. I see. Tatano and Daisuke were always clowning around together, and Kotone was always there alongside them laughing. It had been quite some time since he'd gotten to walk along Dogenzaka with Kotone. How have you been lately? Well, with a newborn to look after, it's been pretty hectic. But there's never a dull moment. Things have been good. I'm glad to hear it. Kotone was always as bright as a sunflower. Sometimes, Tatano managed to convince himself that just the sight of her was enough. Oh, this is gonna be sad. Absolutely. Outside the bank, Kotone held Suzune out to him. Tatano received the baby with an anxious frown. What's with the face? I'm not good with babies. I haven't held one very often. Oh, you'll be fine. Don't worry. Just hold on to her for a minute while I take care of things inside. Alright. He held the baby gingerly, like it was a bomb that might explode at any moment. Kotone chuckled softly. Suzune steered and squirmed in Tatano's arms. She kind of has Kotone's eyes, he thought. It was strange, the sensation of holding a child. She was so soft and light, and yet such a real and responsive presence. The faint warmth of her body warmed Tatano inwardly in turn. When Kotone returned, after making her deposit, they strolled to a nearby park, Suzune back in her mother's arms. Do you have any plans for marriage, Tatano? I haven't thought about it. Work has me plenty busy. Oh, that's just an excuse, Kotone said. If there were really some woman you wanted to marry, you wouldn't let work stop you. Then I suppose it's because there hasn't been anyone I felt that way about. Really? Nobody this whole time? Yeah, really. I see. But still, seeing the two of you like this makes me realize how nice having a family could be. Tatano peered deeply into Suzune's face. Well, if it ain't Tatano. He looked up as a cheery voice cut into the conversation. It was Daisuke. What are you doing here? He asked his wife. I could ask you the same question. Come on, give me a break. I've come to make the deposit for the client. In that case, no need to worry. I just took care of it myself. I thought you'd forgotten about it. Really? Kotone smiled as Daisuke reached down and carefully lifted Suzune in his arms. Beaming happily at his daughter, he nuzzled up against her tiny cheek. Daisuke, long time no see. Yeah, glad you're doing well for yourself, Tatano. They walked side by side, Daisuke proudly showing off Suzune's drowsing face. What do you think? Adorable, isn't she? Yeah, luckily she doesn't have your looks. Hey now, bad-mouthing me the same as ever, huh? Some things hadn't changed since high school. Why not drop by our place for a bit? Daisuke offered. Sorry, I'm in the middle of a job, actually. Tatano turned to glance at Kotone. That's when he noticed there was a knife in front of her. An instant later, Daisuke screamed, Kotone! A man had come up behind his wife and now held a kitchen knife to her throat. Kotone stood stiffly, frozen in terror. Let her go. Tatano took a step toward the man. The slightly upturned eyes, the close-cropped hair, the thin mustache, all the details matched the description. This had to be the man Tatano was after. Shut your damn mouth. You want to try and kill me, huh? This lady here wants to try and kill me. The man was babbling nonsense. The reports had said the suspect was a tweaker. Right now, his mind was probably a complete mess from meth withdrawal. Oh yeah, this is definitely going to be sad. Left unchecked, there was no telling what he might do. Now I'm pretty sure I know what's going to happen. Tatano shoved Daisuke behind him and drew his gun from his jacket. Wait, don't shoot, you'll hit Kotone. But Tatano ignored Daisuke's shouts and trained his gun on the perp's shoulder. He was confident in his marksmanship. Oh no. He never missed at this range. Ugh. Tatano, please back down, Daisuke pleaded. Suzune still clutched in his arms. I beg you. I can't, Tatano hissed under his breath. This isn't someone we can reason with. The assailant began waving his knife about. He could stab it into Kotone at any moment. Tatano had to take the shot now. He aimed for the shoulder of the arm the man held his knife in. Tatano, stop, Daisuke shouted. Don't do this. For a brief moment, Tatano's eyes met Kotone's. He thought he saw her give a tiny nod. Oh, don't shoot! Yep. It was all over in an instant. By the time Tatano had the perp subdued, Kotone's white shirt was soaked through with red. With Kotone's death, so too died Tatano's heart. Did the guy have an extra knife? I think the implication is that he picked up the same knife that went flying, but yeah. Yeah, it feels like he had an extra knife somehow. Whatever feelings had lived inside him had been reduced to cinders, leaving only a never-ending need to atone. Countless times he thought of ending his life in order to make things up to Daisuke and his children. The only reason he didn't go through with it was that he knew death would be the easy way out, and so he'd stayed on as a detective. He would carry the weight of his sins with him for as long as he lived. This was the sentence Tatano gave himself. "15 years had passed since Kotone's death." I'm glad chat is up for doing knife puns. For the first time, Tatano had gone to visit her grave. He was standing by the grave marker with his hands clasped when someone called out to him from behind. Excuse me?" A slender young girl stood there, flowers in hand. Tatano instantly recognized her, Suzune. She looked like Kotone had back in her high school days. "Did you know my mother?" she asked. Yes. We were classmates, a long time ago." "Oh, really? Thank you so much for coming." Suzune gave a slight bow, then gazed up at Tatano with her big bright eyes. You look just like her." Tatano struggled to hold back the tears. He felt as if Kotone stood before him, returned to life. "My father tells me the same thing all the time. I'm sure once you're all grown up, you'll be just as beautiful as she was." A forlorn smile came to Suzune's face. "Once I'm grown up? Well, I don't think that's going to happen. I guess I really do have a lot in common with my mother, including the part where I'm going to die young." "Don't be ridiculous," Tatano exclaimed. "Why would you say such a horrible thing?" Suzune took a step backward, looking shocked to be rebuked by a stranger. "My apologies," he said hurriedly. "I didn't mean to startle you." "No, it's all right," Suzune murmured, clutching the flowers close. "Honestly, it's not something I like to talk about myself, but I'm sick, so there's not really anything I can do to change it." "Sick?" "I have a heart condition. A generic expression for illness pertaining to the heart, also referred to as heart disease. Includes things like heart failure, valvular heart disease, and so forth. A transplant's the only thing that can help me, but my blood type is a little bit weird, and it doesn't look like they'll be able to find a compatible donor. The immune system exists to get rid of foreign substances in the body. Often a patient's immune system will attack a transplanted organ, which can result in the organ failing or functioning poorly. To mitigate the risk of rejection, it is preferable for the donor and the recipient to have matching body tissue. In the case of a heart transplant, characteristics such as blood type and pre-sensitized antibodies, human leukocyte antigens, must be screened ahead of time. Then, bowing her head, Suzune stepped in front of the gravestone and clasped her hands in silence. Tatano felt a wrenching pain inside of him, as if Kotone were being taken from him all over again. If there really was a god, why would he do such dreadful things? Is there nothing I can do? He nearly lamented aloud. I'll do anything. Suzune, I'll do whatever I have to in order to save you. Tateno clenched his fists as he stared at the grave. Tell me, Kotane, what can I possibly do for your daughter? Please tell me. Please. So the question is how he figured out Hitomi. And so the months rolled on. Everything changed just after 10 o'clock that morning. Tateno was on the stakeout when his cell phone rang. He glanced at the call display and saw Daisuke Endo's name. He hadn't heard from Daisuke in years now. Fearing that something had happened to Suzune, Tateno answered the call despite his current tense circumstances. At once, he heard Daisuke wailing. Suzune had a seizure. She may not come back from this one. Tateno's terrible suspicions had been right on the mark. He felt himself growing weak. Please, Daisuke exclaimed. You need to shoot that girl you're with. That Hitomi Osawa. You need to shoot her in the head. If we have her heart, we can save Suzune. At first, Tateno couldn't make sense of what Daisuke was saying. Hurry up and shoot. Shoot her, please. Hitomi Osawa has the Bombay blood type. Wait, hold on, Tateno said, keeping his voice low. You want me to kill Hitomi Osawa? Why? He quickly scanned the area. Daisuke, are you nearby? Wait, where are you? Don't worry about that. If you can just render her brain dead, we'll be able to transplant her heart into Suzune. The term brain dead refers to a state where the entire brain, including the brainstem, is beyond any recovery. In Japan, brain death is defined by Article 6 of the Act on Organ Transplantation, which states that the brain death can only be declared with the goal of authorizing a transplant, and is subject to the judgment of at least 2 doctors inspecting the patient according to a preset process, at least 6 hours apart. Alright. Shooting someone in the head didn't necessarily guarantee they'd wind up brain dead. And even assuming it did, if Tateno shot the Osawa girl here in the middle of the scramble, it would cause a giant incident. By the time the autopsy was completed, the window for a heart transplant would surely have passed. Tateno, shoot her, please. Daisuke, I can't. You know I can't do that. Hurry! It was like his old friend wasn't even listening to him. Look, even if she did wind up brain dead, they wouldn't be able to perform a transplant. But Daisuke kept on shouting. It's fine. It'll be fine. I'll make the transplant work somehow. You'll make it work? Even knowing how ridiculous that was, part of Tateno wanted to know what he had in mind, if anything. I finally found it. I found something we can do for Suzune. Please help me help her. Tateno understood Daisuke's feelings painfully well. To be helpless to stop the suffering of someone you loved, nothing in the world hurt as much as that. I want to save Suzune. Tateno, this is the one thing I will ever ask of you. Tateno could hear choked weeping from the other end of the line. And at the sound, something inside him shifted. Yes, Daisuke was right. The likelihood of a transplant happening wasn't the issue. What mattered was that right now, he could take action. He could do something for Suzune. He mustered up his resolve, feeling doubt lift from his heart. For Suzune. For the daughter of the woman he'd loved. Tateno checked the gun tucked inside his jacket, and then slowly began making his way through the crowd toward Hitomi. Now you know why we're here. Tateno gestured subtly to his gun, its barrel still pressed against Maria's temple. Kano's own gun wavered in his hands. He was crying inside. There was nothing else he wanted to hear from Tateno now, and now he was sure of one thing. Words were never going to stop this man. Kano, Tateno said. At my age, I've seen all sorts of young detectives come and go. He fixed his lonesome gaze on Kano. And you're about the worst of the lot. Whenever it's time to take action, you immediately do something reckless. Do you know how many formal apologies I've had to write because of you? Tateno let out a heavy sigh. But you know, Kano, because of the way you've looked up to me, you've saved me. And that's the truth. He sounded like a man speaking his last words. Now come on, see if you can stop me. He pressed the gun harder against Maria's temple. Kano took aim at his former hero's head. Detective Tatano. His finger wavered on the trigger. Shoot him. You have to shoot him. If you don't shoot him, Maria is going to die. He tried desperately to convince himself. I am going to stop you. Tatano looked him coldly in the eye. Do it then. Shoot me. Kano stared right back. He tightened his finger on the trigger. Oh, we got to the end of the chapter. Well then. Well, I think the only one we haven't talked to so far is Osawa now. So I guess we're going there. Find out if that bullet hit him later. I don't want to know how people feel. All I want to know is what viruses feel. I prefer viruses, because they make no move to encroach on me from the other side of my microscope. They leave me free, to let my thoughts wander as I wish. While it may be true to say I understand viruses, I have never been able to understand my fellow humans. I don't know them. I don't know a single fundamental thing about them. With Tanaka dead, trying to use the backup passwords for the fingerprint scanner had become a hopeless endeavor. The only remaining means of gaining entry to the storage area was to issue an emergency unlock request to the electronic lock manufacturer. And in order to do that, they needed approval from 6 members of the board of directors. They got like 4 hours to do it. Returning to his study, Osawa called Makino's personal cell phone. What is it? Makino said gruffly as soon as he picked up. Osawa informed him of the situation, including Tanaka's death and the fact that Maria was infected. The news left Makino at a loss for words. Please, Osawa begged. You need to hold an emergency board meeting. Makino was silent for a few moments. I'm afraid I can't do that. Why not? Are you just going to sit by and let my daughter die? Osawa raged. And not just her. If Maria goes symptomatic... That was still only an if, but Osawa was reluctant to put his fear into words. If she goes symptomatic, the ooze virus will sweep through all of Tokyo. I realize that, Makino replied, but one of the board members is overseas on business. Holding a meeting is impossible. Despite the gravity of the situation, he sounded astoundingly nonchalant. Osawa couldn't back down now. There must be some other option, like a web conference or something. That doesn't help us if we can't get in touch with him, Makino huffed. He went missing a few days ago in the middle of his business trip. What? The head of Akoshi Pharmaceuticals' New York branch has been missing since April 25th at 9 p.m. local time. There have been no demands for ransom, and so the New York Police Department is investigating the possibility of some other form of foul play. Can't we just say that he said yes? Osawa was almost too appalled to be angry. That's the most ridiculous lie I've ever heard. Would you like to speak to my on-site contact if you don't believe me? This was like arguing with a child. If Makino was deliberately working against him, he'd never know if this disappearance was for real or not. In that case, can you please appoint a representative in his stead, Osawa pleaded. Selecting a representative is a complicated process. Even if we started right now, it would take until sometime tomorrow afternoon to complete. Tomorrow afternoon. By then it would be too late for any of this to matter. Sir, can't you see how absurd the things you're saying are? What would you have me do? Makino barked. These are the realities of corporate politics. I understand, sir. You will do nothing for my daughter. That's what you're saying. That's not what I'm saying, Makino replied. Look, I'll see what I can do to appoint a representative more quickly. He hung up. Dick. Stone had suggested that waiting for an appointee wouldn't be a terribly hopeful prospect. I have no more allies, Osawa thought. All I have left now are foes. So we can try and go get the antiviral by ourselves. Or we're going to take Makino at his word. Heck, we're going for that antiviral. He couldn't count on anyone anymore. Osawa's just going to have to get that antiviral by himself. Tanaka might be dead, but there still must be some way to get that lock open. Taking extra care to avoid the notice of the detectives, Osawa snuck out of the house and headed for the garage. Ha! Keep out. Alright. Continued. Why does Minarkawa... I thought we got him to a keep out point too. Oh, no, right. Achi. Okay. Go with, is it fun hitting people with that thing? Because he still, like, doesn't have the wood thing then. And then move forward. You look tired, sir. Hmm? Yeah. I guess so. His reply was barely audible. Then we don't hit Achi. The taxi stopped outside of Heaven Publishing. Minorikawa left a 1,000 yen bill on the seat and exited the cab. He was stumbling his way toward the building when someone called out to him. Mr. Minorikawa! Hmm? For a moment, Minorikawa didn't recognize the man now idling his sedan at the curb, but then he took a closer look, and he realized it was Kenji Osawa. And a jump point. Oh, Mr. Osawa. Sorry, but I haven't been able to look into that thing you asked about yet. I see. That's quite alright. Osawa looked pale and haggard. Minorikawa's reporter sense started tingling. This guy is the key to something. He recalled what he'd heard the detective and his buddy talking about back on the scene of the explosion. Roughly 8 hours ago, they infected Maria Osawa with the UVA virus. We don't administer Kenji Osawa's antiviral before she develops symptoms. You're caught up in something big, aren't you? How do you know that? Because, the reporter said simply. I'm Minoru Minorikawa. Osawa rolled his eyes. Well, that'll make this simpler, I guess. Get in. I'll tell you everything. Minorikawa hesitated. This might be his big chance to land a beyond incredible scoop. Yet it felt like it was too late to matter. Still, landing a major story, selling out an issue of 4-star general gossip, and putting Heaven Publishing on the road to solvency, all that was the least he could do in Toyama's memory. You don't drop a story until you have what you need. Maybe it was too late to save Toyama, but Minorikawa got in the car. Osawa's tale was beyond anything Minorikawa had imagined. So, they send you threatening emails, devise a plan to kidnap your daughter in order to get the antiviral, and now that that's failed, they're turning to bioterrorism. Finally, Minorikawa was able to flesh out the story behind the conversation he'd overheard earlier. As he did, he could feel a growing sense of exhilaration. So basically, they're now effectively holding all the people in Shibuya hostage and demanding the antiviral, is that it? Before Osawa can answer, a new idea occurred to Minorikawa. Wait, hold on. Why didn't they just start by holding the whole city hostage? Why did they need to go through all the trouble of kidnapping your daughter? I don't know, Osawa said, shaking his head. Perhaps they wanted the ransom money? For a mere 50 million yen? Can't imagine international terrorists bothering for that much. You can't know how terrorists think, Osawa spat. Let's just assume, though. Could there be some other reason they abducted your daughter? Osawa didn't reply. He was probably too preoccupied with finding a way to save his infected daughter to think about anything else. Still, something about the course of events didn't quite add up to Minorikawa. But whatever the case, if the criminals were after his antiviral, then sticking with Osawa ought to bring them closer to the truth. Norikawa was still mulling that over when they arrived at the laboratory. The two men hopped out of the car and were immediately rushed by a pair of security guards who subdued them in a matter of moments. "Hey," Norikawa protested. "What the hell is this?" "Unhand me," Osawa yelled. "I'm Kenji Osawa. This is my lab." But evidently that didn't matter to the guards. "Hello." Another man emerged from the building. He and Osawa exchanged a few brief words. Judging from the tone of the conversation, this was someone who outranked Osawa at the company. "Take him away." As the newcomer looked on, the guards dragged Osawa into the building. "Hey," Norikawa shouted at the man as he began to walk away. "Don't you know what's going to happen to Shibuya? Don't you care? If you just stand by and let the people of this city die, Okoshi Pharmaceutical is going to be held responsible." The man stopped in his tracks. "And if that happens, you'll be ruined personally too," Norikawa added. "You know I'm right." "That will be up for the police to decide." "You're going to regret this. Don't be a fool." Norikawa's resolve was unwavering. His pen would mete out justice. He might have come close to forgetting what he'd once stood for, but now the old fire was back. "I see. It seems this isn't something to leave unchecked." The man gestured with his jaw. "Take him as well." More security guards surrounded Norikawa. "Hey, stop it. Let me go." But though he struggled fiercely, there was no escape. Once he was dragged through those laboratory doors, Norikawa never wrote another article again. Oh, well, this is definitely a bad end. Alright. Norikawa accompanied Osawa to the lab, but there was no getting past the security guards. And even if Osawa can't get into his own lab, there's no real reason to go there. It's Osawa who needs to decide on a different course of action here. I see. Interesting. So, Norikawa shouldn't go to the lab? Let's try jumping to Osawa instead. As he was driving past Aoyami, Osawa spotted a man he recognized walking along. He pulled up alongside him and called out through the window. "Mr. Norikawa!" "Oh, Mr. Osawa. Sorry, but I haven't been able to look into that thing you asked about yet." "I see. It's quite alright. The business with Ai and Tanaka could wait until later. Right now he needed to focus on protecting Shibuya. If he didn't get his hands on that antiviral... You're caught up in something big, aren't you?" How do you know that?" "Because I'm Minoru Norikawa." Well, the man's egotism had some justification. Maybe he didn't know the details, but he clearly had some inkling about Osawa's situation. Something clicked in Osawa's mind. He was up against the wall. Okoshi Pharmaceutical had told him they were going to just let Maria die. He was past the point where he could resolve this peacefully, but he was not going to give up without a fight. When it came time, Osawa was sure the man could help him. "Well, that'll make this simpler, I guess. Get in. I'll tell you everything." Norikawa thought for a moment and got into the passenger seat. As he drove to the lab, Osawa filled Norikawa in on all the details. The reporter listened intently, occasionally interrupting to ask a question. "So are you planning on getting your hands on the antiviral?" he asked, when Osawa had finished. "I'm not sure. I figured I'd think of something after I got there." Norikawa let out a nasal chuckle. "Just improvising, huh? Oh well, I'll back you up. At least I know I've found my way to something important." They pulled up outside the lab and the two men got out of the car. Does anything different happen here? Immediately, a team of security guards burst out through the gate and forced Osawa to the ground. Hey, Minorikawa protested. What the hell is this? The guards had grabbed him as well. Unhand me, Osawa yelled. I'm Kenji Osawa. This is my lab. Mr. Osawa, Minorikawa shouted. What the hell's going on here? But Osawa was just as confused. He looked up to see Makino standing before him. Sir, tell these thugs to let me go. But Makino's just frowned silently down at him. So, not only will you not help me, you're actively getting in my way? Osawa glared up at his boss. Maria's life. No, countless human lives are at risk. There's nothing that you alone can do about that. That's what I need you to understand. Makino gave a signal to the guards who proceeded to drag Osawa away. The scientist wreathed with despair at his own impotence. In the end, there was nothing I could do. Yeah, so maybe I was supposed to wait. Maybe doing something about it was not the right way for this. Alright. So I decided to try to get the antiviral directly and even got some unexpected help from Minorikawa along the way. Fortunately, upon arriving at the lab, they had a run-in with Makino and his security goons. Looks like Osawa's just not going to be able to get into his laboratory. He'll have to make some other decision. Yeah. Alright. That's easy enough. I mean, I don't like that choice, but if it leads to something else... Do. Maybe Detective Kajiwara will show up and offer him a banana. Still, he'd just have to take Makino at his word. Right now, that was his only course of action. Sawa sat down in front of his computer and quietly closed his eyes. If only I could just go to sleep and wake up tomorrow morning and find all of this resolved. Night, Memo! All I'm asking for is a miracle. But he knew reality would never be so kind. He could hold his eyes shut as long as he wanted, and it wouldn't make his hopeless situation go away. He felt the anxiety welling up inside him until it seemed like he was going to explode. Needing a distraction from his helplessness, Osawa opened up Ayonet. Oh, good. He knew this was mere escapism, but he couldn't just sit and do nothing while waiting for Makino to call back. He posted a new topic with the title, Aya Fortune Teller. I tried the Aya Fortune Teller. My response basically said I was a bad person who can't connect to the people around me. And you know what? That's exactly right. I'm only interested in my own little world. It's probably why my wife and my assistant at work got so fed up with me. It's the same with my two daughters. What sort of things are they interested in? Do they have a lot of friends? What are their aspirations for the future? I don't know any of those things. It never even occurred to me to find out. I'm such a terrible father. Okay. Osawa's fingers ceased their tapping on the keyboard as he thought back to when Maria and Hitomi were younger. Daddy! Daddy! The two girls would follow him around like a pair of puppies. Their father was their everything, that much was clear just by looking at their faces. He'd felt a ticklish giddiness at having his girls cling to him, so he never felt anything like this in his life. But there were times where he also found it tiresome. I'm sick of being the person I am. There's nothing I can do about that, though. I'm sure it's far too late for me to change. Rusko Brog, hey, thank you for that 4-month resub. Welcome back. He poured out all of his negative emotions into his post. It felt like stream of consciousness drivel, but he didn't hesitate to write it all down. He wanted other people to know what a miserable excuse for a human being he was. At last, when he couldn't think of anything else to add, he posted his bitter confession to the forum. He was staring numbly at the monitor when he heard a furious shout from the next room. "You've got to be kidding me!" It was Kajiwara, and Osawa had never heard him so angry. Hello? Osawa headed into the living room and found Kajiwara embroiled in a vehement argument with the other detectives. "I don't care what HQ's policy is, I will not just quietly go along with this." Kajiwara had already screamed himself red in the face. "Ah, yes, I guess they have to pack up now. You're out of line," snapped the MPD detective. Kiichi Sawatari, with the Metropolitan Police Department's first criminal investigation section. Having heard of Kajiwara's past deeds from friends at the Shibuya precinct, he recommended to his boss that Kajiwara be assigned to the investigation at the Osawa residence. After seeing the detective's interactions with Osawa, he is confident that his recommendation was in the right. However, given the circumstances, he can't help but take a cold stance towards Kajiwara. "Hold your tongue. I don't care if I'm out of line. You may have talent, but I'll give you that," the other detective said. "But you're a precinct detective, and this isn't your jurisdiction. It's not your place to question orders from higher up." Wait, Osawa thought. Kajiwara really is a real detective after all? "Go on. Explain the situation to Mr. Osawa." Kajiwara bit his lip in frustration at the other detective's orders. "Very well," he said. But before he could say any more, Osawa noticed that the police equipment had been cleared off the table. "Hold on," Osawa said. "What's going on? Has something happened?" "Allow me to explain, sir," Kajiwara said. His bitterness showed plainly on his face. "We've been recalled, sir. The MPD has established a security force headed by members of its Public Security Bureau to deal with the bioterrorist threat. Because the kidnapping task force has not yet found Maria, and she is infected with the virus, the task force personnel have instead been absorbed into the security force and will continue their work under its direction." Osawa narrowed his eyes, fighting to keep the confusion from his face. What do you mean by that?" He was shaking, terrified to have his suspicions confirmed. "I'm truly sorry, sir, for having been unable to help you." Kajiwara gave a deep and solemn bow. "But Maria, what's going to happen to Maria?" "Another unit has been tasked with bringing your daughter into custody, sir. That much at least Osawa could process." "You're going to place her under quarantine, aren't you?" Kajiwara's lips stiffened, but he nodded. "In order to minimize the spread of the virus, so I'm told." "No!" Osawa cried. "You can't do that. If you do, there won't be any way to save her." His head spun. "Please, I beg of you. You need to get Maria to me. I might be able to save her." When Kajiwara didn't respond, he turned to the other detectives. "Please, don't... You can't place Maria under quarantine." But the detectives' only answer was to avert their eyes. "Why are you all ignoring me? Please, you have to listen. If you bring her to me, I can figure something out. I know I can." He plunked himself down on the floor, yelling and flailing his arms like a child throwing a tantrum. The detectives exchanged sullen looks with one another and then walked off and left him there. He knew he must be a sorry sight, but nevertheless he kept shouting after them. "Please don't stand by and let my daughter die." Only Kajiwara remained with him in the living room. "I'm sorry, sir. This was beyond my ability to stop." He gave another apologetic bow. Osawa felt suddenly deflated. "No, you've done a fine job, Detective Kajiwara. It's me who should be sorry. I've made such a disgraceful display of myself." "That's not true, sir. In fact, I'm deeply moved. I can tell how much Maria must mean to you." Osawa shook his head. "If I'd really been thinking about Maria, I would have made an effort to work with you detectives more. That was all just self-absorbed shouting. A moment of emotional selfishness. And yet, as a result, you convinced me to stay here with you." Kajiwara proceeded to pull out his phone and put in a request with the task force headquarters to remain at the Osawa residence. He got into a heated spat with his commanding officer, but ultimately received permission to stay on as the police liaison with Osawa. Well, the detective said. He'd hung up. You see, there are some people who are legitimately moved by a parental display of emotion, even if I'm not certain that I can do very much in staying here with you. That's not true, Osawa replied. There's plenty you can help me with. He looked into Kajiwara's face and smiled. For instance... I can have a banana whenever I want. You find things that have gone missing. That fried egg on rice you made me was delicious. Oh, I want to go with the first one. We're going with the first one. I can have a banana whenever I want. Kajiwara returned Osawa's grin even more brightly. Yes, of course. By all means, have as many as you like. He then produced a pair of bananas from his pocket, handing one to his companion. Friendship bananas! Osawa peeled his banana and took a hearty bite. The mild sweetness was pleasant and soothing. It was a flavor that brought back memories. I often eat bananas when I go to the park with my daughter, Kajiwara muttered between mouthfuls. I didn't realize you had a daughter, Detective. She just started grade school this year. Oh, really? She must be adorable. Well, I don't get to see her as much as I'd like. A lonely sort of smile crossed Kajiwara's face. Why is that? Doing this job caused me to neglect my family. Finally, about 2 years ago, my wife hit me with the divorce paperwork. I wanted to be able to keep our daughter with me, but, well, the law tends to favor the mother when it comes to custody issues. I'm going to ignore that. The detective then pulled 2 bars of chocolate from his pocket. It's good to have something sweet when you're exhausted, he said. Sawa took one, but said nothing. More recently, my ex-wife has been talking about getting remarried, Kajiwara continued. And she wants me to stop seeing our daughter. He bit into his own chocolate bar with a soft snap. It's no less than I deserve, but it still hurts. Sawa couldn't help but sympathize. The man was losing his daughter. Here was someone he could really talk to. He was sure of that much now. Sad friendship bananas forever. Detective, I apologize. I've kept things from you because I was worried that they involved classified corporate information. Oh? Kajiwara's eyes glimmered with interest. Earlier today I received some emails. They could be pertinent to the case. Would you mind letting me see them? Asawa shook his head. On the contrary. Back in front of his computer, Asawa saw that AINet was still open. Pretty Honey had responded to his forum post. I want to read the response. One moment. Just let me read this. Asawa read the response. I got that same result. Do you really think it's too late? Don't give up hope. Hang in there. He's making so many friends right now. This is a horrible situation. It's never too late. Every family has its share of problems. Like, you'll never find one that doesn't, I'm sure. When it comes to family, there's no such thing as game over. So don't let it get you down, Julie. Besides, I did learn one thing from reading your post. In the end, a father's happiness is his daughter's happiness. Kajiwara peered into the monitor. A young girl is posting to a forum for people 40 and older? It's Pretty Honey. She always replies to my threads. The detective furrowed his brow. I see. Something the matter? No. That last line there just has me curious is all. A young girl writing something like that? Well, that's neither here nor there right now. Let me see those emails if you would. Sawa opened his email. He pulled up the images of the human testing on the monitor. What is this? Kajiwara stared at the monitor as if unable to look away. These are images from unauthorized clinical testing of an antiviral drug I developed, carried out by my company without my knowledge. Images of a... I'm sorry, what was that? The detective frowned at the unfamiliar terminology. In simple terms, the antiviral is a wonder drug to combat the UA virus. Hold on. Maria's infected with the UA virus, isn't that right? Yes. It was a species of virus discovered in South Africa relatively recently. Roughly 12 hours after infection, patients develop a cough, then a fever, then begin vomiting, and ultimately begin to bleed uncontrollably from all over, resulting in death. The mortality rate is... Osawa was reluctant to say it. Kajiwara held his breath, waiting. It's nearly 100%. Kajiwara shuddered. But wait, he said after a moment. If you have this wonder drug, then Maria... Osawa shook his head. Without Tanaka, I have no means of getting it out of the lab. Kajiwara's frown deepened. I see. May not be much to go on, but I think we can put together at least one piece of our little mystery here. Mystery! Something difficult or impossible to explain. An enigma. You see plenty of books titled The Mystery of Such and Such or The Secret of Whatever on bookstore shelves. But when you read them, you're invariably disappointed by the mystery not being that mysterious after all. Pardon me one moment. Kajiwara inspected the email addressed of the sender A, then brought up the email header. You don't see email addresses like this much. It's seemingly from a foreign country, but that may be fake. You can tell that just from the email? The detective flashed a little grin. Take a look here. So if we just do this, and then this, his fingers flew over the keyboard, calling up the header details, singling out the received from field. This set of 4 numbers at the bottom is the sender's IP address. Think of it as an ordinarily hidden location marker of sorts. As he spoke, the detective pulled up a website called IP Station. He copied and pasted the set of 4 numbers and pressed the enter key. The monitor showed the name of the provider, connection method, and other such details. Provider, a vendor that provides an internet connection service. A typical internet connection requires a dedicated line. Customers who do not already have one must make a contract for one with the provider. When the provider establishes your connection to the internet, you are assigned an identifying number called an IP address. Sawa couldn't make heads or tails of most of it, but one thing drew his eye. Access point, Shibuya Ward, Tokyo. Kajiwara went to the email program's options and checked the server info for Osawa's connection. Deep furrows formed in his forehead. This is the same provider that you use, Mr. Osawa. What does that mean? What kind of internet connection do you have here at your house? What sort? Well, it's plugged in over there, but Osawa pointed at the router. Does everyone in your family use that same line? Yes, I think so. Kajiwara opened up a command prompt, then typed ipconfig. Command prompts, a little prompt for users to issue computer control commands via keyboard instead of mouse, also frequently used to refer to the window or program, allowing for such. Alright. Okay, so, if the same numbers we saw before pop up here, that's a bad sign. Oh? Sawa stared at the monitor. Kajiwara pressed enter and a black window covered in white alphanumeric characters appeared. What the heck? Kajiwara muttered under his breath. Wait, what's going on? Osawa asked. Explain simply so that I can understand. Faking an email address is simple enough, but the typical person wouldn't be able to fake an IP. It's very likely that these emails were sent from another computer inside this house. Oh no! It was coming from inside the house all along! Osawa had to stifle a gasp. The emails had been sent from his own house at around 11 o'clock that morning. Since Osawa hadn't sent them himself, that left only one possible culprit. Yeah, his wife. Suddenly, his phone rang, nearly startling him out of his seat. Makino's name showed up on the incoming call display. Osawa quickly picked up. Is there an update on the emergency board meeting? He blurted. Makino's voice was quiet and subdued. I tried pulling whatever strings I could, but to no avail. I'm afraid holding a board meeting today just won't be possible. The phone fell from Osawa's hand. His only possible means of saving Maria was now gone. Oh, end of chapter. Sweet. I mean, we kind of suspected the wife was in on, like, a lot of stuff before, but I didn't think she'd sent the emails. Alright, so we got you to the end. Minorikawa now is fine-ish. Yeah, so we'll probably have to end up doing that one next. But we'll worry about that tomorrow, because it's after 9. I will be streaming more of this tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And then, not sure when exactly... Not sure when exactly the next stream will be. Like, there'll definitely be the regular streams next week after Sunday, but I'm away this weekend, so not until then. We'll see what happens. For now, I've got, if you're looking for the older VODs of this game, I have those up on YouTube. And, of course, there's the Discord. So, I'm gonna go. We're gonna raid Funko. And then, yeah, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Or those of you who can attend. Take care.